My fusion system, fusing 1,000 chickens at the start. Chapter 391, Distribution of Resources. The meeting of the Severed Fingers Higher UPS ended with Watson issuing his orders one by one. Soon, the 10 leaders left the Three-Legged Cat Tavern and ordered their subordinates to meet at Count Grey's manor later. Count Grey, do you know why the Black Emperor wants to meet us later? If you know, can you tell me? Veronica walked behind Count Grey and stopped him before he left. It's not something I can guess, Count Grey said with a reverent look on his face. Then he heard Veronica relentlessly ask, I don't need you to guess, I just need you to tell me what you know. Count Grey cleared his throat. Let me tell you what the Black Emperor did to us last time. The Black Emperor took us to the manor to heal our fingers. Some of those who were disabled also recovered, and Donder was one of them. In addition to helping us recover, the Black Emperor also gave Marcus and me a large amount of wine and weapons. You may not know that, but the Black Emperor has mastered a spell that can fuse things of inferior quality and turn them into higher quality items. There's such a spell. Veronica looked doubtful. However, she had asked Watson for 100 million gold coins, and he had also conjured it in an instant. The strange feeling in her heart weakened slightly and was replaced by an even more intense curiosity. That Black Emperor looks so young, but he has mastered so many magical spells. Who is he? Count Grey turned his head and looked around. When he found that there was no one around, he moved closer to Veronica's ear and said, Don't tell anyone about this. The Black Emperor had forbidden us from divulging this matter, but you are one of the leaders. I think you have the right to know about this. Actually, the Black Emperor's real name is Watson. Now you should know who he is, right? Watson? Antonio's disciple from the border? And also the Sword Saint's disciple. Veronica chewed on the name, she was shocked. Watson's name was famous in the capital. Even though she had just returned from outside, she had heard many people talking about that young man. He had become the disciple of 2 famous figures in the kingdom, and he had even made a name for himself in the Royal Academy's assessment. He had obtained a perfect score, one that they only see once every few decades. Then, the king had personally invited him to a banquet. That was a lot of achievements for a single person, and that demonstrated his power. However, that young man had another identity. He was the Severed Fingers gang's boss, and his nickname was the Black Emperor. Now you know why the Black Emperor is so powerful, right? With his identity, the Severed Fingers gang will be able to go legitimate. We won't have to hide and worry about anyone suppressing us. At the same time, the resources in his hands will allow us to earn more because, with the Black Emperor's participation, the Severed Fingers gang will enter a new era from now onward. I hope so. Watson's deeds had already convinced Veronica, but she still did not want to admit it verbally. Furthermore, whether Watson's policies were effective or not, it was useless to talk about it. It was better to wait for time to verify it. On the other side, Bashir and Amin were walking together on the road. Both of them held middle finger positions, and they had a good relationship with each other. Bashir, does your leg still hurt? It doesn't hurt at all. That D*MN Black Emperor, why didn't he say that he's a platinum tier elite? If he had said earlier, I wouldn't have attacked him, and I would have been lying on the ground for half a day, making a fool of myself in front of others. Bashir stepped on his right leg as he complained unhappily. Bashir, stop complaining. If it weren't for the Black Emperor's kindness, I think you would have died. But I really didn't expect to meet such a talented person in the world. He would be very famous in the kingdom. Why have I never heard of him? As Amin recalled the scene, he could not help but feel a wave of fear in his mind. When the dagger in his hand collided with Watson's neck, he felt the shadow of death shrouding his body. As a professional killer, he was always able to kill his prey in various ways. His name was the Bloody Executioner. However, a person put his neck out for him to cut, but he could not even cut it. That was the first time he had encountered such a situation. There's still half an hour before we head to Count Grey's manor. Let's use that time to investigate the Black Emperor. It is likely just an alias. I want to see who he is. Many of the Severed Fingers higher UPS had the same thoughts. Within half an hour, they gathered all their members while preparing their own matters and headed toward Count Grey's manor. Soon, half an hour had passed. Close to 100,000 people were heading toward Count Grey's manor in various streets of the royal city. They inconspicuously entered the estate. About 100,000 people stood inside the manor. Most of them, who did not know what had happened, were discussing it carefully and inquiring about what had happened. The Severed Fingers members were scattered throughout the kingdom. The 100,000 people were not all of them. Those were just the elites selected to attend the meeting. They had even more members in the entire kingdom. At that moment, those elites stood in front of the 10 higher UPS. They looked in the direction of the gate nervously, waiting for Watson's arrival. One of Veronica's subordinates whispered to his companion beside him, "I didn't expect the 10 leaders would appear here at the same time. They're usually out of sight, without a trace. It was generally impossible for any ordinary member to see them, so I didn't expect to see all 10 of them here." What an honor, indeed. His companion looked smug. "What? Then, I know a little more than you. I heard that we have a new boss, and he has met with our 10 higher UPS. He had issued commands to turn our illegal activities into legitimate ones. So, those higher UPS don't need to hide their identities anymore. A person with a higher status than the 10 higher UPS? Is that true? If that person really exists, what should we call him? I don't know his name, but I do know that all the higher UPS refer to him as the Black Emperor." While the members were whispering among themselves, suddenly, a vast magical black hole appeared in the sky above Count Grey's manor. A youth in a feathered coat holding a black and red longsword in his hand descended from the sky like a god. "Everyone, I'm sorry I'm late. Greetings, Black Emperor." After the youth arrived, Marcus and the other higher UPS knelt and bowed toward the teenager. Among them, Bashir and Amun lowered their heads even lower than the rest. They had learned the Black Emperor's identity within the past half an hour. The Sword Saint and the Astrologer's Disciple, the youngest Platinum-tier elite in the history of the kingdom. With such an identity and strength, he was bullying me when he fought with me. Bashir sighed in his heart as he lowered his head. How could he be so blind? He should have detected Watson's strength. Initially, he was not very convinced of Watson's identity, but the more he investigated, the more he understood Watson's power. The young man was very powerful. Plus, the Severed Fingers gang experienced an increase in their turnover for the past 2 days. For example, Marcus and Count Grey sold weapons and wine for tens of millions of gold coins a year. However, with Watson's fused weapons and red wine, the turnover in the past 2 days had exceeded 10 million. Watson had fused many weapons that were in short supply in the black market. Many would still buy them even though they cost 1,000 gold coins. Count Grey's business was also booming. Noblemen would go to the tavern and leave with 10 bottles of the same red wine. We don't need to resort to illegal activities to grow the Severed Fingers gang. I wonder how Watson's brain works? He is already an influential person, yet he can still come up with so many strange ideas. Is he not busy with training? While Bashir was indulging in his wild thoughts, Watson had already descended from the sky to Count Grey's manor. A young girl trailed behind him from the black hole. This is the royal city? It looks good. By the way, there are so many people here. Are these your newly recruited subordinates? Globe, don't talk about so many irrelevant things. Get the things I told you to bring here. Yes, Master. I'll release the things right away. The young girl Watson called the globe was the world transformation mirror. He wanted those who had lost their fingers to be there in half an hour because he wanted to give the higher UPS some time to prepare. He also needed the time to contact the World Transformation Mirror and get something from Mount Creation. Suddenly, huge palaces fell from the black hole in the sky. First, there are 10 platinum-tier palaces on Mount Creation. Before the palaces fell, Watson had already extended his right hand to the top of his head. System fusion, activate. Congratulations on successfully fusing 10 platinum-tier palaces, Master. You have obtained a diamond-tier palace. Following the system notification, the huge palaces above his heads transformed into rays of light and fell into the grey manor below, enveloping the entire manor. Under the blinding rays of light, the manor underwent a complete transformation. Firstly, the entire manor did not change. However, the people there felt that the manor had become tens of times more spacious. Numerous spires and towers were situated within the courtyard, and there was also a huge floating courtyard. The top of the courtyard was covered with densely packed trees. Fresh air filled the entire area. The floating courtyard was above that. However, the Severed Fingers gang members could not see it from below. What is that? One man stared at the top of his head. His voice trembled slightly. Am I seeing things? In the blink of an eye, the Black Emperor had transformed the courtyard that we are in. He is worthy of his status with the gang, indeed. While I am standing here, I can feel the speed of my combat aura increase quite a bit. If I can continue to train here, I might be able to turn from bronze to silver tier in a few years. Another person sighed. Diamond tier building, 8-story courtyard in the sky. The structure was composed of 8 courtyards with different levels. Each courtyard had a different environment. Abilities, terrain change. The terrain and scenery of each courtyard can be changed according to the owner's wishes. Absolute invisibility. The 8-layered courtyard is located in another space and can't be seen from the outside. Cultivation enhancement. Cultivation speed increased by 100%. 8-layered Aurora Strike. The courtyard can absorb light elements and cast a large-scale light element spell on the ground, causing diamond tier damage. Additional abilities, light enchantment. All items stored in the courtyard will be enchanted with light elements. The information appeared in Watson's eyes, and he nodded in satisfaction. Count Grey's manor was initially used to store red wine and a temporary place for the Severed Fingers members to gather, but there were too many members there at that moment. 100,000 people seemed to be too much for the manor, so Watson decided to renovate it. From now on, that manor will be the Severed Fingers gang's new headquarters. Its name is the 8-story courtyard in the sky. It can accommodate 1 million people, and it's very well hidden. You can construct the buildings you want in these courtyards and store the items you want to store. Even platinum tier elites will not be able to discover its location. Watson announced the use of the courtyard to everyone there. Black Emperor, if you had told me that you wanted to build a new headquarters, I would have offered you a few unused mansions in the capital. I can give them to you to build a new stronghold, Veronica said. She looked disappointed, as if someone had stolen a large amount of her gold coins. To Veronica, making money was not only her specialty but also her nature. If one did not make money, one would lose money. That was her life principle. At that moment, she learned that Count Grey's manor had been renovated into something more luxurious. There were also all kinds of strange effects. So, Veronica felt envious. She regretted that she had not asked Count Grey about it. They could not have built the same thing with 1 million gold coins. She could have had the same thing. Black Emperor, don't listen to Veronica's nonsense. Her mansions in the royal city belonged to those who couldn't pay their debts. They don't belong to her at all. I do have a few houses in the royal city that belong to me. Why don't you use my house, Black Emperor? Klein asked. My place is in the royal city, so it's more appropriate for Lord Black Emperor to use my house. No, it's more appropriate to use mine. The rest of the Severed Fingers leaders spoke one after another. None of them gave way to the others. That was an opportunity to upgrade their houses for free. Who could give that up? Even though they were the severed fingers higher UPS and were in charge of the underworld forces that covered the entire kingdom, they had never lived in a courtyard that floated in the sky. No one would be able to reject that feeling of being high up and overlooking everything. You don't have to fight for it. There will be plenty of such opportunities as long as you perform well in the future. We are doing the fusion in Count Grey's manor because I gave him and Marcus a mission 2 days ago to see which of the red wine and weapons would be more profitable. In the end, Count Grey won. That is my reward to him. Watson waved his hand to stop the quarrel among the severed fingers higher UPS. Next is my gift to you. Absolute healing. A thick layer of green light emerged from his body and washed over all the severed fingers members. Those covered by the green light instantly recovered their severed fingers. Some who were disabled were also healed. Many of them were shocked. They exclaimed, "My finger is healed." Then, they knelt toward Watson. If Watson's diamond tier courtyard had shocked them, then his following action had stunned them and left them grateful. Then, the third thing. Globe, take those things out. Watson gave another order, and Globe immediately took action. She tore the black hole above her head a little bigger, and fruits that emitted light and fragrance fell from the sky. They floated in the air like dancing flames. The fruits were silver and golden red. They were the moon and sun gems that grew on Mount Creation. They had an oversupply of the fruits on the mountain, and they were taken as ordinary wild fruits. However, to the Severed Fingers gang members, who mainly were bronze and silver tier elites, those were supreme treasures. These two kinds of fruits are called the moon and sun gems. Their purpose is to allow the user to obtain the strength of gold tier and awaken the cultivation talent of light and dark elements. Currently, I've brought more than 1 million of these fruits from Mount Creation. Apart from the ones for each of you, the rest can be used to brew wine. The wine cultivated from these fruits will have some effects that can help people increase their strength. I've named them Sun Wine and Moon Wine. Each bottle is priced at 1,000 gold coins. Count Grey, I'll leave this matter to you. Count Grey had successfully stimulated the market with the fusion wine in the past 2 days. He had won the hearts of the people in the capital. Watson felt that it was time to launch a more impactful product and make a fortune. Yes, Black Emperor. Count Grey's eyes were filled with excitement at Watson's order. He put his head on the ground devoutly. He swore that he would complete the task Watson had given him perfectly. The wine was named after the moon and the sun gems. It was well suited to its magical effects. If that wine appeared on the market, it would definitely sell well. Right Ring was also excited. She had asked Watson for the formula to fuse the wine, so she did not expect Watson to give her something better. Next is for the two thumbs who are in charge of selling weapons. I want you to sell platinum tier weapons. There are currently 10,000 sets of platinum weapons and armor here. I will put the sun and moon gems on the first floor, and I want to put those weapons on the second floor of the courtyard. Watson waved his hand, and a strong wind blew, splitting the sun and moon gems into 2 parts. One part was blown into the hands of the 100,000 members with broken fingers, and the other part was blown into the lush courtyard in the sky. Some of the members quickly bit into the fruits when they got their hands on one. There was a buzz. The member who had consumed the sun gem immediately burst with a gold tier aura. 2 incandescent light elemental combat aura wings appeared behind his back, causing him to shout out in pleasant surprise. It's true. The Black Emperor has told the truth. I've advanced to gold tier. Wow. It's true. I'll give it a try too. With someone taking the lead, everyone stuffed the fruit into their mouths and successfully advanced to gold tier. The aura of the 100,000 gold tier warriors combined into one, causing the earth to tremble. At the same time, swords and armor flickered with platinum colors fell from the black hole, landing in the second floor courtyard made of metal and rocks. Each of those weapons costs 10,000 gold coins. I want you to sell them slowly to avoid selling too many at once and causing the price to depreciate. Please rest assured, Black Emperor. We will not disappoint you. Marcus and the other thumb stuffed the sun fruit into their mouths as they lowered their heads excitedly. If they were already excited when Watson brought fruits that could allow people to advance to gold tier, their mood did not worsen when they saw the platinum tier weapons. The kingdom only had no more than 10 platinum tier weapons. However, there were 100,000 of them in front of them. Even if they each had a set, it would be more than enough. Chapter 392, A Request from the Sword Saint. Next, index fingers who are in charge of the banks and the underground casinos. After Watson finished dealing with the weapons and armor, he continued waving at Globe, who was in charge of maintaining the black hole in the sky. Veronica and Klein breathed heavily as anticipation appeared on their faces. Count Gray and Marcus had obtained mystical fruits and powerful platinum tier items, respectively. They did not know what they would get. You are getting this. With Globe's help, Watson took 20 shimmering rings and let them float toward Klein and Veronica. What is that? A ring? Compared to the previous 2 batches of gifts, why is our gift so bad? Veronica looked at the ring in front of her with a disappointed expression. It seemed like the ring in front of her was sparkling with starlight. It should be of high quality. It was very likely better than the 100,000 platinum weapons that Watson had given to Marcus. However, there were only 20 rings, what could they do with those? Just as she was thinking about that, Watson stretched his right hand outward and showed the ring on his hand. These rings are known as Wish for the World rings. As the name implies, you can make a wish when you wear the ring. Each ring can make 3 wishes per day, and the items you receive will be twice the amount of what you wish for. I could get 100 million gold coins because I used those rings to multiply 1 gold coin countless times. Black Emperor, thank you. Your gift to us is simply too good. Veronica, who had complained about the gift, quickly put half of the 20 rings on all of her fingers. If Klein had not been quick enough to take the remaining rings, perhaps Veronica would have worn the remaining 10 rings on her hand as well. There was no need to sell magical fruits and weapons. As long as she had those rings, Veronica could obtain a large amount of gold coins by making a wish every day and live a life of counting money while lying in a pile of gold coins. Compared to the first 2, the ring was clearly stronger. The gang's thumbs and ring fingers, who had just received their supplies, cast envious gazes at Veronica and Klein. Who's next? After Watson's voice sounded, the remaining middle fingers and pinkies immediately began quarreling. It's Elvin and Snick's turn. Let them go first. As for middle fingers, we are more modest and aren't willing to compete with them, Basher said, his eyes twinkling. Yes, we are very modest. Amon nodded immediately. Their words made Elvin look disdainful. Aren't you too ashamed to say that? You were always the first to go up for any benefits, so why are you modest this time? We are pinkies, and we always come last in the Severed Fingers gang. It's only right for us to receive the rewards now. They realized Watson's reward got better each time. The later rewards would be better, so they wanted to wait for that. Elvin, don't slander me. When have I ever snatched the benefits? Well, I want to let you go first this time. Don't you want it? I don't want it. Elvin, don't do this the hard way. When I get angry, it'll be very scary. Really? Then I'll have to take a good look. I hope your leg will be hard enough after it heals. Don't let it get broken again. Watson smiled when he saw Elvin and Basher arguing. He did not stop them. That was what he wanted to see. Therefore, he needed someone to stir the others' competitive spirit. For example, when someone saw the things given to others were better than theirs, it was inevitable that they would feel unbalanced. As long as he balanced the things given to different higher UPS and let them compare the items themselves, they would compete for better things. The last 2 rewards, I'll give them to you at the same time. Watson nodded at Globe. Soon, 3 black and white beads floated from the black hole in the sky and unicorns with a single horn and shining fur. I remember that this magical beast was put here by the Black Emperor 2 days ago. How did it become like that? Some of the Severed Fingers members recognized the unicorn as they cried out in surprise. The unicorn had 3 pairs of pure white wings on its back. At the same time, a layer of light engraved with mysterious runes appeared on the unicorn's horn on top of its head. It rotated slowly and gave off intense pressure. Faint golden feather phantoms appeared on both sides of the unicorn's body, accompanied by the whispers of the gods. Platinum Tier Magical Beast, the Angelic Unicorn. A unicorn that was fused with the bloodline of an angel and is much more powerful than a traditional unicorn. Attributes: Light. Abilities: Holy Strike, Holy Judgment, Rapid Self-Healing, Holy Enchantment, Archangel's Sword, summons the Angel's Sword, causing Platinum Tier light magic damage. Holy Shield, resists attacks up to Platinum Tier. Additional abilities: Absolute Reflection, Body Fusion, temporarily fusing with the host's body, lending its own strength to the host. That unicorn was hunted initially for its horn from the Forest of Eternity for King Landar III, who had secretly attached the soul of a god to it, causing the unicorn to be corrupted. Watson had asked Globe to find some powerful magical beasts on Mount Creation to fuse them with the unicorn. That completed the beast's evolution to become a Platinum Tier magical beast. As for the 3 black and white pearls, they were the blessings of the gods and demons that Watson had researched on Mount Creation. If one consumed them, they could transform into an angel or demon race, obtaining strength that was not inferior to a Platinum Tier elite. That unicorn is a Platinum Tier magical beast, a gift to Elvin. As for the remaining 3 pearls, they are called the blessings of the gods and demons. They are the more powerful sun and moon fruits. Watson distributed the gifts separately. Elvin looked at the unicorn that had spread its wings and flew in front of her. She extended her hand and gently stroked the smooth, silky fur on its body. The remaining 3 people received the 3 beads. When they heard Watson say that the effects of the beads were even more powerful than the sun fruit, they could no longer resist swallowing them immediately. Boom! With a muffled sound, the ground beneath Bashar's feet was shattered by a powerful force. 2 demon wings spread from his back, black flames burned on them. 2 long horns grew on his forehead. There was a ball of flame in the shape of a sharp sword in the center, and his eyes had turned to red color. I've become a Platinum Tier elite. Bashar clenched his fists. His fingernails had become very long, and with a casual wave of his hand, there was a muffled explosion in the air, and a giant pit was created in the ground. My race has changed too. My current appearance is very similar to that of the legendary demon race. Snick's body had also turned into a demon. Besides a horn and a demon tail, there was also a billowing black fog on his body. When the black fog touched the ground, it corroded holes in it. It was as if it came from the deepest abyss. Amon's body was different from theirs. White feathers condensed from the light and covered Amon's back. At the same time, a halo appeared above Amon's head. This power! I've become an angel. 2 people had transformed into demons and the other into an angel. That scene caused the rest of the members to feel agitated. It can change one's race, allowing one to become Platinum Tier without training? What is that thing? Marcus and Count Grey looked at each other in shock. They saw the desire in each other's eyes, especially Count Grey. Marcus was a Gold Tier warrior. If he was lucky, he might get promoted to Platinum Tier in his lifetime. However, Count Grey did not have much strength. It was almost impossible for him to advance to Platinum Tier, but the situation had changed. Anyone who got the beads would advance to Platinum Tier, even an ordinary person could do that. Platinum Tier elites had always been synonymous with power in the kingdom. Many of the members imagined the day they could stand at the top of the kingdom to command everyone. Even Veronica and Klein, who had received the wish for the world rings, were filled with envy when they saw Bashar, Amon, and the others who got the pearls. They were in high spirits just a moment ago, but they suddenly felt that the rings on their hands were not that good. After a moment of silence, Watson said, "Those are all the rewards I'm giving you at this time. In the future, I'll give you something else from time to time, based on your performance." As soon as Watson finished speaking, he signaled for Globe to enter the black hole. Globe bade him farewell before entering the black hole and closed the spatial tunnel connected to Mount Creation. "It's finally over." Almost everyone present heaved a sigh of relief. On the one hand, they were hoping that Watson would give them more things. On the other hand, they were afraid that the things that Watson gave them would be too scary. They felt that the blessings from the gods and demons were too heaven-defying. If there was something more powerful than the blessings from the gods and demons, their hearts might not be able to withstand it. The rewards that Watson gave were truly shocking. Initially, many of those Severed Fingers members had chosen to become Watson's subordinates only because of their higher UPS command or because they were forced to do that. However, after that, they had acknowledged Watson's identity as the Black Emperor and were prepared to perform well in front of Watson in exchange for a reward. Watson sighed when he knew that his goal had been achieved. For example, the things he had allocated to the Severed Fingers gang's higher UPS were not randomly distributed. He had done that after some careful consideration. Count Grey was good at brewing wine, so giving him the Sun and Moon gems was more cost-effective than giving them to others. Another example was Amun and Bashar's position as the middle fingers. Completing the assassination missions required strong combat strength. Therefore, he would give them blessings from the gods and demons. "I'm now a Platinum Tier elite. Let's see who dares to provoke me in the capital. Let's see who is unhappy with me. If I punch them now, I'll be able to beat them to their knees and make them call me grandfather." Bashar restrained his demonic form, but he was still excited in the pleasure of becoming stronger. He had a proud expression on his face. "Bashar, I advise you to put away your tricks. Black Emperor bestowed your strength, but it's not for you to satisfy your selfish desires," Elvin said coldly. She was stroking the unicorn. "Don't threaten me, Elvin. You don't need to care about what I do. Also, even if I do something out of line, what can you do about it? Can you beat me? Don't tell me you want to use the winged horse to deal with me. Even if that magical beast is Platinum Tier, I can still pull its head out and stick it in its behind. How dare you insult the beast that the Black Emperor had given me? Bashar, I think you're courting death." Elvin's eyes narrowed, and an aura that surpassed Platinum Tier descended from her body. Bashar, who had been laughing arrogantly, suddenly became silent as if someone had grabbed his throat. "The aura on your body is even stronger than mine. Are you at Diamond Tier? Impossible. This isn't real." "What's impossible?" "My Diamond Tier strength was bestowed by the Black Emperor. Nothing is impossible for him." "Bashar, just because you've obtained that bit of strength, it doesn't mean that you can act so arrogantly. You are nothing in my eyes. Now, do you think I have the qualifications to teach you a lesson?" Elvin enunciated each word, causing Bashar's expression to darken. His lips moved a few times, and in the end, he hung his head in dejection and did not speak. He thought that Watson could only advance a person to Platinum Tier. He did not expect the young man to advance them to Diamond Tier. How powerful was Watson? After advancing to Platinum Tier, Bashar had some small thoughts in his mind, but at that moment, those thoughts were gone. "I have done all I came to do. I will be leaving now. The development of the Severed Fingers gang will depend on everyone. I will only be giving you directions. Let's work together to grow the Severed Fingers gang." "Yes, Black Emperor. Under your leadership, the Severed Fingers will become better. Long live the Severed Fingers gang. Long live the Black Emperor." All the Severed Fingers gang members knelt on the ground. Their gazes were fervent, and their voices shook the sky. Accompanied by the roars of his subordinates, Watson turned around and left Count Grey's manor. The moment he walked out of the door, the voices stopped. He turned around. He realized that the manor behind him looked exactly like Count Grey's manor from the outside. He smiled. Watson, why are you here? We've been looking for you for a long time. Where did you go? Just as Watson was about to turn around and take a step forward, a familiar voice suddenly sounded behind him. Then, a pale hand touched his shoulder. It was Christina. She was looking at him with a strange expression. Sword Saint Reed and Antonio were behind her. They had the same odd expression on their faces as well. Watson, if I'm not mistaken, you just walked out of that manor. Reed and I have been searching around that manor for a long time, but we did not find you inside. Is there something special about that manor? Let's not talk about that manor. Watson, I remember that the manor is the property of Count Grey. He is a famous nobleman in the wine trade. Do you know him? First, it was Antonio, and then Reed joined the inquiry team. Regarding that, I will explain it to you when I have time, masters. I wonder why you are so anxious to find me. When he saw Christina with Antonio and Reed, he guessed that she must have told them about Augustus, which was why they were so anxious to find him. Their action warmed his heart. We're looking for you because we went to the Campbell family a few hours ago. You really are something. You taught the Campbell family a lesson, but you also left them with some dignity intact. After you left, the Campbell family's patriarch was so angry that he wanted to complain to the king. Fortunately, your master and I came forward and suppressed that matter. Reed sighed. Watson was shocked to hear that. What? Master, you have already been to the Campbell family. When? When you left, or more accurately, before you left. Antonio and I hid outside to watch the situation. We saw you unleash your power and fuse a diamond tier puppet, and we also saw you make a starlight tier sword and feather coat. Oh, right. The most interesting thing is that your master made a bet with me on whether you would choose to use magic or sword technique to solve the problem. For that, we bet 20 years of red wine, and Antonio lost 3 bottles to me in a row. Reed, don't talk nonsense here. If Watson were not afraid to destroy the Campbell family with magic, he would have used magic instead of sword technique. Really? Antonio, I think you should stop deceiving yourself. Watson's sword attack destroyed most of the Campbell manor. If he did not want to destroy them, he wouldn't have used that sword technique. Reed, are you done? If he were not worried about destroying the entire Campbell family, then it must have been because he had fused a longsword, so he decided to use it for his attack. It was not because the spells I taught him were inferior to your sword technique. Watson smiled wryly, his head hurt. He did not think that while he was surrounded by thousands of guards in the Campbell family and attacked with holy relics, his 2 masters were hiding nearby and discussing his next moves. They were too childish, and they were too assured of him. Since you saw me leaving the Campbell family, then you wouldn't be looking for me because of that. What was the reason? Watson decided to interrupt their argument. Watson, you're really smart. We can't say that it's related to the Campbell family or that it has nothing to do with that. Did you sign a contract with the Campbell family before you left, asking for their holy relics? Since you weren't in a hurry to take those holy relics when you left, Antonio and I took the initiative to help you retrieve them. Why don't you research and help create a weapon for me? I don't have many requirements. As long as that weapon can defy the gods and heave, it will be fine. Reed rubbed his hands, he no longer paid attention to Antonio. Instead, he gave Watson a flattering smile. Chapter 393, Fusing the Thread of Destiny. D*MNU, Reed, you're too cunning. Didn't we agree to get those holy relics and let Watson make a starlight tier weapon for each of us? Why did you tell him to make only one for you? Before Watson could respond, Antonio had already started to complain. Antonio, is not that staff in your hand the diamond tier weapon Watson made for you? You already have a diamond tier weapon, so don't overthink it. Watson has never made a weapon for me, so he should make one for me first. Reed's righteous retort stunned Antonio, and then his expression darkened. I don't care. Either he makes one for the both of us, or doesn't make one at all. Even if it were a stone, a starlight tier item would be more precious than a diamond tier item. A diamond tier item would be trash. A few months ago, Antonio still treated his staff as something precious. He would never say that a diamond tier item was trash. However, in front of the starlight tier temptation, a diamond tier thing was nothing to him. Antonio, we have talked so much here and haven't asked Watson for his opinion. Why don't we ask Watson who he wants to make a weapon for? Reed turned to look at Watson, his expression becoming more and more amiable. Watson, I still have some profound sword techniques that I haven't taught you. As long as you help me fuse a weapon, I will teach you everything I know. How about that? Watson, if you make weapons for me, then I will not hide anything from you this time. Antonio followed closely behind, expressing his stance that he was not willing to be outdone. Masters, please don't be like that. Don't put me in a difficult position. Watson scratched his head, his expression a little awkward. First, let me see what those holy relics are. If there are enough of them, it's not impossible for me to make 2 starlight tier weapons. It's a deal then. It's not convenient to show them here. Let's go back to Master Reed's place first. As soon as Watson finished speaking, Reed and Antonio looked at him as if they were waiting for him to say that. Reed waved his hand and sealed the surrounding space while Antonio chanted into the sky. A vast magical teleportation array appeared. It enveloped and teleported them in an instant. At the Sword Saint's courtyard. Samuel and the others were sitting in the courtyard. They yawned when they saw the craftsman who had been invited to repair the huge pit that Watson had made when he was practicing his sword technique. It had been almost half a day since their master left the courtyard. Are we just going to wait here? What else can we do? Master gave us a day off. Are you going to disobey his orders? A disciple said. Of course, I don't dare disobey Master's orders. Plus, Watson is also too powerful. Master has been strict with us for so many years, and that is the first time he has given everyone a day off. Watson's power must have frightened him so much. Even I felt my confidence take a hit when I saw that young man's monstrous talent, let alone Master. I was quite proud to be Master's disciple, but now it seems that I'm still far from real progress. Who says so? I think it's different from what you thought. There are many people with such high talent in the world, and they work so hard. What's our reason for not working hard? Whenever Master told us to train hard every day, we did not comply. And now we suddenly get a day off, we feel empty. I wonder when Master is coming back. Samuel did not say a word. He only lowered his head. Suddenly, he seemed to feel something. He raised his head and saw a vast teleportation array in the sky. Then, Antonio, Watson, and the others appeared. It's Master. They are back, someone exclaimed. Samuel took the lead and stood up. He bowed his head respectfully toward Reed. Greetings, Master. Reed waved his hand casually, indicating that he did not need to stand on ceremony. He looked impatient. Samuel, quickly, clear everyone out of the courtyard. I'll give you 3 minutes. I don't want to see any outsiders here. But Master, those craftsmen haven't finished their work yet. Samuel was stunned for a moment before he spoke hesitantly. It seemed like his master was very anxious. It was the first time he saw his master, who had always been calm, show such an expression. Pay them. They don't need to continue working here. Go, quickly. Yes, Master. Under Reed's firm orders, Samuel gave some money to the workers in the yard and ordered them to leave. Curiously, he brought his other junior brothers to Reed's side, wanting to see why his master was so anxious. Watson, the venue has been arranged. Let's hurry and start. Reed, who could not wait, turned to Watson. Closely after that, Antonio also waved his arm and chanted an incantation. A black hole emerged in the air. More than 20 light shadows flew out and landed on the ground, turning into colorful treasures. Each of those treasures emitted a diamond-tier aura. The moment they appeared, the entire courtyard trembled, and the air became sticky. Even Samuel, who was a platinum-tier elite, could not help but hold his breath. "Watson, take a look. Is there anything useful in those things? If there is not enough, Antonio and I will go to the Campbell family to ask for more. They claim that they only have 24 holy relics, but I know that they must have hidden more." After Antonio released the holy relics, Reed waved his hand toward the courtyard. A vast layer of sword aura immediately enveloped the entire area, ensuring that the aura would not leak out no matter what happened inside. "Let me take a look first." Watson touched his chin as he looked at the holy relics in front of him one by one. The first one was made of 3 triangular-shaped squares, each of which had an eye symbol sculpture. Third Era Diamond-tier Holy Relic, Void Sentry. Abilities: Absolute Shift, opens a void door, banishes enemies. Void Sentry Tower, can be built into a Diamond-tier Sentry Tower, gains detection ability and defense against attacks of the same level class. I've seen this relic before. He moved his gaze to the next holy relic, and the information appeared in front of him. 12th Era Diamond-tier Holy Relic, the Tudor Holy Grail. Abilities: River of Death, the Holy Grail carries the river water that symbolizes death, enough to poison a Diamond-tier's existence. Soul Fairy, through the Holy Grail, the soul can be reincarnated and replicated into another person's body. Under certain conditions, the memory can be perpetuated. Absolute Load, the Holy Grail acts as a container, able to carry everything in the world. The second relic was a cup that was made from some kind of gold-like metal. At the bottom of the bowl-shaped cup was an antique base with mysterious and old pictures engraved on it. It looked like a person dressed in luxurious clothes was wrapped in the shape of a mummy and placed into a golden coffin, sealed in a huge inverted pyramid. However, the picture was very blurry due to its age. Next, Watson looked at the third holy relic. His eyes brightened because that was an ancient-looking longsword. If Master Reed wanted a handy weapon, that sword was the most suitable for the fusion. The ancient longsword was about a meter long, and the blade was slightly curved. The blade and the direction near the hilt were engraved with a mysterious symbol. It was emitting a faint light, slowly rotating, and the entire hilt was in the shape of a feather. It was as if it was made from the feathers of some terrifying magical beast. Third Era Diamond-tier Holy Relic, the Sword of Creation. Abilities: Absolute Cut, capable of cutting everything. Space Cut, capable of splitting space into different squares to trap enemies. Time Cut, capable of splitting time and allowing time to jump forward. And Fate Cut, capable of evading an unwanted fate and changing a predetermined outcome, but can only be used once a day. Bonus: Universal Key, can open any door in the world. Each of those holy relics has powerful functions. It's hard to imagine how powerful the civilizations that existed before us were, and how they were destroyed. Watson quickly looked through all the holy relics. Some were weapons that could cut through everything, some were accessories with strange effects, and some were utterly unknown. No matter what kind of holy relics they were, they all had one characteristic: they were powerful. The 24 holy relics were mainly from a period between the 3rd and 12th eras. There were no holy relics from before the 3rd era. According to what Watson knew, the world's timeline was divided into 12 eras since recorded history. The more famous one was the mythological era more than 10,000 years ago, also known as the First Generation. More than 10,000 years ago, the continent was dozens of times bigger than the current one. There were starlight and even higher-tier existences everywhere on the continent. However, because those existences were too powerful, they caused the continent to shatter due to their conflicts. The shattered continent could no longer support their survival, so they were forced to migrate to the starry sky. After the mythological era ended, it was time for the second era, the Platinum Era. Even though the starlight tier gods had left the continent, their bloodline continued to exist there. Those gods' descendants possessed a strength that was comparable to a platinum tier elite when they were born, in addition to some terrifying abilities inherited from the gods. Such creatures were collectively known as the mythological creatures on the continent, including angels and demons. The Second Era ended in a conflict between the angels, demons, humans, the sea race, the tree spirits, and other races. The human race rose from within. Borrowing from the civilization of the gods, humans established the Void civilization with the ability to reproduce and learn skills that surpassed any other race. At the peak of the Void civilization, humans displayed strength comparable to the mythological era and created many Starlight-tier magical ships. They were prepared to explore the Void, but unfortunately, those powerful ships were destroyed overnight for various reasons. After that, even though most of the Void civilization's technology had disappeared, humans continued to occupy the dominant position on the continent eras after eras. The last era was the Tudor dynasty, which was about 1,200 years ago. In general, a holy relic would be more powerful the older it was because it might contain the gods' technology. Later relics had less power because that initial knowledge was lost. Just like how the kingdom can only produce platinum-tier items currently. Watson sighed in his heart. As he sensed his two masters' fervent gazes, he collected his thoughts and began to extend his right hand toward the holy relics in front of him, activating the system. System fusion, activate. Congratulations, Master, for successfully fusing 12 diamond-tier holy relics, obtaining a starlight-tier weapon, the goddess of fate's thread of destiny. Following the system notification, half of the 24 holy relics disappeared in an instant. They turned into bright lights that collided before fusing into a shining thread. The thread seemed to exist in that world and still be in another space. It contained a strong aura of destiny. Just looking at it made people's hearts flutter, and they felt like they were about to be judged. Starlight tier weapon, Goddess of Fate's thread of destiny. Abilities, retaining the Sword of Creation's abilities. Additional abilities, Destiny, connect the thread of destiny to a person's body. It can connect the other party's fate to oneself and transfer all damage received to the other party. Absolute recombination, the thread of destiny can be decomposed into the smallest energy factor, and can also be reassembled into objects of any shape. Absolute hit, the attack will definitely hit. Karma reversal, after its release, the enemy will first suffer the damage. The Divine Kingdom of Fate, after releasing the Divine Kingdom that governs fate, the fate of the enemy will be controlled by the host. When the thread of destiny appeared, the Sword Saint's disciples who were watching the situation were stunned. They had seen Reed return in a panic, chase the outsiders away, and lock down the courtyard. They did not know what Reed had wanted to do. They finally realized that Reed wanted Watson to make a Starlight tier weapon. Am I seeing things? Those 12 holy relics disappeared in an instant and turned into a thread. One of the disciples rubbed his eyes. Even though the 12 items turned into one, I feel like the new item has become stronger. Just looking at me makes me want to kneel. It's not inferior to Master's Kingdom of the Sword, another disciple said. He had the same surprised expression on his face. Watson, I've asked you to fuse a sword. Why did you fuse a thread? That doesn't match my appearance. Reed frowned at the item that Watson had fused, expressing his dissatisfaction. Don't worry, Master. Actually, this Starlight tier weapon is much more powerful than you think. The attack in its thread state makes it more flexible. At the same time, the threads can also be entangled, turning into different shapes of weapons. For example, the traditional thin sword. Watson raised his hand. The threads of destiny around his body immediately gathered and turned into a thin sword that flickered with a translucent luster. It seemed to exist in that world yet looked illusory. Another example is the mighty and domineering heavy sword. Following Watson's voice, the thin sword in his hand immediately spread outward and turned into a giant sword as long as a door and as thick as a palm. Mysterious symbols were engraved on it. It can even be turned into armor. Watson disintegrated the heavy sword. Threads spread outward spontaneously and attached themselves to his body. They gradually adhered to each other and weaved into a set of bright white armor. More threads spread around the armor, connecting like a net. Watson, you can't just tell me that. Show me how powerful those threads are. Reed shook his head. It's simple. Watson smiled and extended one of the threads from the armor, connecting it to Antonio, who was not far away. Then, he waved at Reed. Master Reed, try to attack me now. Platinum tier fighting technique, infinite sword slash. Reed raised his hand and used a platinum tier sword technique. The violent sword aura mixed and turned into a huge sky-splitting sword that slashed at Watson's body fiercely. The thread of destiny armor on Watson's chest shattered, but he was not injured at all. On the other hand, Antonio, who was nearby, flew backward with a whoosh. His clothes were torn, and blood seeped from his chest. That is the first ability of the thread of destiny. It can transfer all damages to others. Antonio fell heavily to the ground. After a long while, he shook his head and got up. He just happened to hear Watson's explanation. He looked flustered and exasperated. Watson, how could you treat Master like that? Even if you want to demonstrate, you don't have to use me as an example, right? I'm sorry, Master. You are the perfect example to highlight the power of that weapon, right? With other people, I'm afraid it would be very difficult to have such an effect. Watson looked at Antonio with an apologetic expression and bowed. Then, he looked at Reed. Of course, I don't need to use Master Antonio's next move. The inherent skill of the thread of destiny karma reversal. As he spoke, a breeze blew across Reed's face, and a bloody scar appeared. I'm injured. Reed subconsciously tilted his head. He raised his hand and stroked his cheek. His face showed a look of disbelief. Watson, what's going on? As the Sword Saint, he was confident that no one could ambush him. However, he did not feel any attack, yet his cheek was inexplicably injured. Watson raised his right hand. A thread of destiny flew in the direction of his finger along the wound on Reed's face. That is the second ability of the thread of destiny karma reversal. That move allows the result of the attack to appear on the enemy's body one step ahead of time. It causes damage before the attack is launched. No matter how strong the enemy is, they can't dodge it. I have just demonstrated the two of the abilities of the thread of destiny. Now I will show its final ability, the divine kingdom of fate. Following Watson's voice, the thread of destiny wrapped around his body instantly expanded and covered the entire courtyard. Threads gathered in midair and turned into a brilliant divine kingdom. Threads also hung down from the kingdom. They were connected to the heads of the people in the courtyard. What's going on? Why am I moving on my own? My body is suddenly out of my control. The Sword Saint's disciples cried out in surprise. Their bodies were connected to threads, which were moving stiffly in a strange shape. The source of the threads was connected to Watson on the other side of the divine kingdom. At that moment, Watson seemed to have transformed into the ruler of the kingdom. The other people in the courtyard were puppets, entirely under his control. Chapter 394, The Crown Staff. Watson stood amidst the crisscrossed lines of the divine kingdom. The dancing threads of destiny wrapped around each of the Sword Saint's disciples, giving the illusion that he was the creator of order. With just a thought, he could control the fates of those people. He could even control Reed and Antonio to a certain extent when their bodies were connected to the threads. That is the true ability of that Starlight tier weapon. It is comparable to the power of the divine kingdom. Countless threads of destiny were attached to Reed's arms and body. Those threads controlled his arms to move spontaneously, and to fight against that power, a similarly powerful sword aura emerged from Reed's body to form the Kingdom of the Sword. The giant sword-shaped kingdom that shot into the sky and the divine kingdom that covered the entire courtyard was formed from countless entangled fishing threads. Sparks of divine light were produced from the friction. Reed could barely remain still. The thread of destiny was formed by the rules. Ordinary people could not cut it off or even touch it. Only people at Reed's level could fight against the thread of destiny. However, Reed could only cut off the thread, but he could not stop its rapid regeneration. Antonio, who was next to Reed, was not so lucky. He could not control the diamond-tier divine kingdom. His posture was comical as he danced like a monkey. "Watson, you just said you would not use me as a demonstration. Why did you let me do a demonstration again? Why aren't you stopping that?" Antonio did not have a beard, or else he would have had an angry expression as he shouted at Watson, who was hovering in the sky. "I'm sorry, Master Antonio. I accidentally let you do another demonstration." Watson scratched his head and stopped that ability. The lines that filled the sky disappeared, and everyone returned to their original state. The feeling of being controlled disappeared, but they still had lingering fear on their faces. They subconsciously distanced themselves from Watson. They never expected Watson would be able to control their bodies even though he had fused a Starlight tier weapon. That was too terrifying. Did that mean that they could even kill each other if Watson wanted them to do that? They would rather be killed in battle because of their inferior skills than die at the hands of their companions. "Watson, is that the weapon's full abilities?" Reed patted his body and looked at Watson with interest after realizing that the thread of destiny had completely disappeared. There were not many things in that world that could interest him. Even though the thread of destiny that Watson had fused was somewhat different from what he had imagined, he was still very satisfied with its powerful effect. After all, that thread of destiny could fight against the kingdom of the swords by itself. Once he mastered the other combination of abilities, it would increase his strength by several times fold. "Reed, is not the power displayed by Watson satisfying you? Don't talk nonsense here. If you don't want that Starlight tier weapon, then give it to that old man." Antonio panicked when he realized that Reed wanted to urge Watson to display the weapon's other abilities. Watson might use him as a demonstration again. In addition, he was very envious of that weapon. He immediately rejected Reed's request. "Antonio, Watson fused that weapon for me. What does it have to do with you? Go away, go away. Who said I don't want that weapon? I do want it." Reed waved his hand at Antonio and came in front of Watson. He grabbed the thread of destiny in his hand and revealed a proud expression. "With this weapon, it's not a problem for me to become the number one person just beneath the Starlight tier. Furthermore, the rules contained in this weapon are exceptional. It's something I've never seen before. If I study it, I might be able to break through to Starlight tier." Advancing to Starlight tier a star meant becoming a god. Reed was only at Diamond tier. There was still a world of difference between that and the Starlight tier. With Reed's strength, even the weakest Starlight tier elite might not be a match for him. "Watson, there are still 12 holy relics left. You have just fused a powerful holy relic for Reed. Next, you have to fuse one for me. We are both your masters. Watson, you can't favor one over the other. My requirements are not high. I just need a weapon that is more powerful than the one in Reed's hand." Antonio looked at the thread of destiny in Reed's hands. His eyes were red with envy. He had no choice but to turn to look at Watson. It was better than the weapon in Reed's hands. Was that a high requirement? Watson smiled bitterly at Antonio's request. However, he knew that Antonio was a person who cared about his dignity. If he disagreed, Antonio would definitely go on and on. He had no choice but to nod. "Master, I can't guarantee that these items will be more powerful than the thread of destiny. I can only say that I'll try my best. There's one more thing. I need to use your staff to fuse the weapon." "What do you need my staff for? Don't tell me you're going to fuse that staff too." Antonio tightened the wooden cane in his hand. That cane was a Diamond tier World Tree staff that Watson had fused on Mount Creation. The name of the person whom Antonio missed was engraved on that stick. On the surface, Antonio did not seem to care much about that stick, but he treasured it very much. After all, that walking stick not only symbolized his longing for someone, but it was also the first time Watson had given him a decent gift. It had an incomparable symbolic meaning. "Don't worry, Master. I won't damage that staff. I'll just modify it to make it stronger. Antonio, since you're so reluctant to give up the diamond tier staff in your hand, don't ask for another weapon. In my opinion, a diamond tier staff is already good enough for you. With your current strength, using a higher tier staff would be a waste. I feel that the thread of destiny still has a small flaw. Why don't we let Watson fuse the remaining holy relics with it?" Reed said. Antonio got angry immediately. "Reed, that is none of your business. Take your weapon and move to the side. You already obtained a Starlight tier weapon, yet you are still not satisfied. You can't be too greedy." As he spoke, Antonio had clearly made up his mind and handed the staff in his hand to Watson. "Watson, take the staff. Remember what I said just now? I want a weapon that is not inferior to the thread of destiny." Watson did not respond to him when he took the staff. He chanted to himself. "System fusion, activate." Following his voice, the remaining 12 holy relics in the air turned into dazzling light and fused with Antonio's staff. The originally emerald green wooden staff immediately changed. First, the color changed from emerald green to yellow, red, blue, green, black, white, and gray. Each color represented a symbol, and the staff was filled with elemental symbols. For example, yellow represented earth elements, and its symbol was in the shape of rocks, and the texture was also rock-like. As for the other colors, red was fire, blue was waves, cyan was wind, black and white were darkness and light, respectively, and gray was the new element, chaos. The staff, made of the 7 elements, did not look real. Instead, it was a combination of 7 powerful elemental rules. At the tip, it formed a crown in the shape of a throne, and on top of that was a 7-colored gem. "Congratulations, Master, on fusing so many diamond tier tools. You have obtained a Starlight tier tool, the God of Magic's crown staff. Starlight tier weapon, the God of Magic's crown staff. Abilities, 7 elemental rules. Releasing magic will no longer require magic consumption, no need to chant, and the power will be increased tenfold. Magical source communication, can communicate with the magical source and directly use the power of the 7 elemental sources to fight the enemy. Additional abilities, 7 elemental kingdoms, can cast 7 divine kingdoms, each of which has a different ability. Crown Mage, the holder of this staff will receive the blessing from the God of Magic, get the arcane crown, and master of all the known types of magic in the world. Magic Seance, can use magic elements to create a god's projection against the enemy. Magic Particle Transformation, can make the body into small magic particles. Can also inject magical particles into the body of others to cast magic. Even though the crown staff had less power than the thread of destiny, its power was not weak at all. In fact, it was even more powerful. Firstly, in terms of power, the thread of destiny could control the enemy. The crown staff also had the ability to control the enemy with magic particles. As long as the magic particles were injected into another person's body and some mind control magic was cast, it could control the enemy. The unique aspect of the thread of destiny was the karma reversal. The unique part of the crown staff was its ability to obtain knowledge. The crown staff could also use the divine kingdom 7 times more than the thread of destiny. He had fused a diamond tier weapon, but the quality of the weapon had increased by so much. Watson had not expected that. That magic staff was not only a weapon but also a treasure trove of knowledge that contained all kinds of magic and elemental laws. The person who held that magical staff, even if he were an ordinary person who was not even comparable to Iron Tier, would instantly become a person who had mastered all kinds of magic, a crowned mage who was equivalent to a god. The so-called crowned mage was the person who stood at the peak of all mages. To be able to achieve it with just a weapon showed how powerful that crown staff was. After Watson fused the crown staff, he handed it to Antonio. The older man took it, and a layer of a 7-colored feather coat immediately appeared on his body. That feather coat was not real, it was made of 7 simple elements, but its defensive power was not inferior to diamond tier armor. At the same time, a small crown appeared on Antonio's head. Even though it was not big, it was shining with a golden light. That was the epitome of the arcane crown, which was similar to the angel's halo. That arcane crown was made of countless amounts of magical knowledge. The most significant change was Antonio's eyes. The moment the feather coat and crown appeared, his eyes became intense. Countless knowledge flashed through them, making his eyes seem to contain the flow of the starry sky and the destruction of heaven and earth. Watson, you did not disappoint me. I feel as if a lot of knowledge about magic has appeared in my mind. It's not only that, but I also sensed the 7 sources of magic in this world. Antonio gently waved his staff toward the sky and said, the source of fire elemental magic. A huge fireball suddenly appeared in the sky. It was like the sun, and it was still expanding. The high temperature it emitted distorted the air, and the expanding flame burned a hole in the protective barrier that the Grand Sword Master had previously set up. That was a pure flame that was flowing out of a corner of the source of magic power. It was not a specific spell, but it contained countless types of spells. All fire elemental spells were born from that fireball. It seemed to be the source of all fire element spells. All platinum and diamond tier spells appeared powerless in front of that fireball. Once its power erupted, the ripples it produced would be enough to destroy the entire capital. That is the essence of magic. I have been searching for the true essence of magic my entire life. I have studied thousands of types of magic but have yet to understand the truth. I did not expect that I would be able to obtain it so easily now. Sighing with emotion, Antonio gently waved the staff in his hand once again. The huge fireball that looked like a sun above his head turned into a source of magical power for the other elements. There was a huge planet-like earth elemental source floating in the air. There was also a water elemental source of magic that was wider and deeper than all the oceans combined. Each source of magical power had its own extraordinary aspects. Soon, Antonio had tested 6 types of magical elements. It was time for the chaos element. When it was time for the chaos element, an eyeball without pupils appeared in the sky. The eyeball was filled with green-gray fog. Even though the strength of the fog was far stronger than the other elements, the power contained in the eyeball was much weaker. It seemed to be not as enormous as the other elements. Why is the source of the chaos elements so weak? It can't be compared to the source of the other elements. Perhaps it's new, so it hasn't grown yet. Antonio looked at Watson. He knew that Watson was the one who created the chaos element. Sensing Antonio's gaze, Watson rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Antonio was right. The source of the chaos element was weak because it was a new element, and the source of magical power had fused with his body. If he used too much, it would make him feel weak. When Antonio was using the staff, Watson felt the source of chaos elemental magic activated in his body. He subconsciously stopped Antonio from showing the complete projection. Otherwise, Antonio's attack would have drained more than half of the source of chaos elemental magic in his body. Forget it. Even if I don't use the chaos elemental magic, the other sources will be enough for me. After experimenting with all the abilities of the magic staff, Antonio was satisfied and allowed the strange phenomenon in the sky to dissipate. He was satisfied he could communicate with the source of magic. He did not need any other abilities. In the future, he did not need to cast any spells. He only needed to pour the power from the source of magic, which was endless and rarely exhausted. No matter how strong the opponent was, they would not be able to withstand such an attack, right? Watson knew that his mission was completed when he saw Antonio touching the magic staff fondly with childish excitement. Just as he felt relieved, he suddenly heard Reed's voice. D***MN it, Antonio. I asked Watson to fuse a weapon for me, but he only fused some threads. Why did you get a magic staff, Antonio, and such a cool magic staff too? Reed stared at the staff in Antonio's hand, looking as if he wanted to snatch it away. If Antonio did not have a staff but a sword of the same design, that would have been the best. Reed was quite satisfied with the thread of destiny, but when he saw Antonio gain so much, it was his turn to feel unsatisfied. He could feel the obvious threat from the elemental laws that Antonio had released. Initially, he was invincible in Diamond Tier, and he could at least be on par with Antonio, if not surpass him. He could not help but feel competitive. Reed, Watson, and I are master and disciple? I have been Watson's teacher for 2 years. You, a latecomer, want to compete with me? Seeing Reed's sour tone, Antonio, who was already excited, became even more proud. Antonio, don't give me that. You only taught Watson what you could teach, and you didn't even teach him seriously. Unlike me, if I want to be serious, Watson can learn my skills in a day. Reed snorted coldly. Watson, who had been listening and did not intend to interrupt, said, Master Antonio, is that true? You only taught me 1 or 2 spells every week for the past 2 years, not because I'm not talented, but because you're not willing to teach me. Watson, don't listen to Reed's nonsense. It's not important, Antonio said. Watson muttered, I think it's quite important. He had always thought that his slow learning speed was because he was not talented enough. It seemed that was not the case. Since his master did not continue to respond to his thoughts, he could only shut his mouth. Meanwhile, Antonio and Reed continued to argue. I have nurtured countless people in the kingdom. Don't you see how many platinum tier elites I have nurtured? Don't tell me that they are useless. After all, the holy relics have already been used. It's impossible for you to want a stronger weapon now. Not possible? Fuse the staff in your hand with my thread of destiny. Perhaps I can obtain the weapon I want then. Reed, are you saying these words to fight with me? I'm not afraid of you. Don't use your weapon. You think I can't beat you? Reed, don't you know that weapons are also a part of one's strength? I'm too lazy to argue with you since you don't intend to hand over your weapons anyway. I see that the Campbell family still has some holy relics that they haven't handed over yet. Let's go and ask them to hand over those items now. When the time comes, I'll let Watson fuse them first. What do you think? Deal. Since the Campbell family bullied our precious disciple anyway, the lesson we taught them was not enough. 1. Reed and Antonio had reached an agreement. Everyone Watson, Christina, and the Sword Saint's disciples had awkward looks on their faces. They did not know whether to cover their ears or not. Antonio and Reed did not look like men of their statuses. Instead, they were like 2 old hooligans discussing how to rob other people. Chapter 395, Do You Desire Power? It had been almost a week since Watson had fused the thread of destiny with the crown staff. That week, Watson had been cultivating in the Sword Saint's courtyard during the day and going to Count Grey's courtyard at night. It was then known as the 8-story courtyard in the sky. The Severed Fingers gang members were pretty efficient after they received their reward. In just a few days, they had created a space in the courtyard suitable for living. The transportation of materials and the workflow were done in an orderly manner. The houses were also arranged neatly. The area did not feel chaotic at all. That week, Watson's life was very peaceful. A week ago, he had helped Antonio and Reed fuse a couple of weapons, which caused Antonio to spill the beans. Watson finally understood that the 2 masters were hiding something and deliberately did not teach him anything. Therefore, at his strong request, the 2 masters taught him everything they knew. First, it was Antonio. The older man had mastered the essence of all the magic in the world because of the crown staff. In other words, as long as Antonio wanted, he could create different kinds of magic. If he imparted all that knowledge to Watson, the younger man would not be able to learn all of them in his lifetime. Therefore, to save time, Antonio chose to teach Watson 10 kinds of elements and 8 types of the most potent diamond tier spells. As for the chaos elements, they were initially elements that did not exist in that world, so there were no known spells. Antonio used those few days and the knowledge he obtained from the crown staff and forcefully created a diamond tier spell for the new element. Its name was the Eye of the World. Once it was released, a huge pupil-less eye would appear in the sky and cast a chaotic airflow that could cover everything within sight. It would destroy everything as if the world had opened its eyes to judge everything. Watson had learned that move a few days ago. Since it was too powerful, he had not used it since then. At that moment, Watson was in the Sword Saint's courtyard. He held a wooden sword and slashed at the air. Once, twice, tens of thousands of times. Sweat flowed down his back and his young face. Phew! Today's wooden sword has been slashed 10,000 times. I can take proper rest now. Watson put down the wooden sword in his hand as he wiped his sweat. Antonio did not hold back anymore and taught him all his magic. Reed did so as well. As a result, he could finish his apprenticeship within a week. Reed and Antonio did not have anything else to teach him. The only thing they could tell him was to keep training every day and not relax so that his strength would continually improve. It was incredible for outsiders to learn from Reed and Antonio within a week. It was also very embarrassing for those two men, but now the two of them no longer cared about that. After Watson had fused a Starlight tier weapon for each of them, their focus changed from teaching Watson things to thinking of ways to let Watson fuse more powerful Starlight tier items. They already had a Starlight tier weapon, and they still lacked Starlight tier armor. If they could also obtain Starlight tier armor, they would consider switching to a Starlight tier mansion and experience the life of the gods. Over the past few days, Watson's two masters had been running to the Campbell family, wanting to get the remaining holy relics from them. However, the Campbells were no fools. After obtaining the other half of the King of Time's puppet that Watson had promised, they had closed their doors to study the puppet. They had rejected Reed and Antonio's requests, resulting in a stalemate between the two parties. The daily sword technique training has ended. Magic training requires a constant release of magic. That courtyard is very fragile. I think it's better to forget about it. Watson hesitated for a moment before choosing to stop. He was at the place where Reed had taught him sword technique. The craftsman had repaired the originally tattered floor during that period. It had become as smooth and clean as before. If he were to destroy the floor again, he would have to spend money to find someone to repair it. If only I could be like Master and communicate with the 7 elemental magical sources. That way, I won't need to practice magic again. In the future, I can release magical sources against the enemy. Furthermore, if I can communicate with the remaining 6 sources, I can also borrow their power and use the system fusion to strengthen the chaos elemental magical source in my body. Watson thought of the crown magic staff that he had fused for Antonio and could not help but exclaim in envy. That was the first time he envied the things that he had fused for others. Usually, he would fuse things very casually. As long as there were enough raw materials, he could always fuse better ones. There was no limit. However, the raw materials that he fused at that time were holy relics. They were different from ordinary diamond tier items that he had fused. As he looked at the celestial feather robe and sword of strife that he had fused, their effects were much worse than the crown staff and the thread of destiny. I really hope that Master can get the holy relics from the Campbell family as soon as possible. The more, the better. That way, I can fuse a decent weapon for myself. After all, the ability to communicate with the sources of magical power was unique to the crown staff. One could only do it with that staff. Even if I wanted to learn it, Master could not teach it to me. In the past 2 days, his 2 masters had brought their newly fused weapons to the Campbell family, and many people had seen them. That had caused a heated discussion. After all, who would want to see countless lines crisscrossing around a body? Even a sword saint, who had separated himself from the world, would not be shocked, let alone a terrifying mage who wore a rainbow feather coat and had a crown on his head. With a single move, he could display the source of magic. Many people in the kingdom said that Reed and Antonio had made a breakthrough and reached a higher diamond tier. The rule of the kingdom would last for thousands of years. The king even invited the two of them to attend the banquet because of that, and the time was set for that night. The invitation was also sent to Watson, but Watson was not interested, so he refused it. After entering the diamond tier, my strength has grown very slowly. I wonder how many years it will take me to progress to starlight tier? It's useless to be anxious now. I'd better go to the Severed Fingers gang and buy some herbs that can increase my strength to fuse with it. I'll increase my strength as much as I can. Watson had made up his mind. A breeze blew by his side, drying the sweat on his body. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, someone's voice echoed beside him. Watson, you must be tired from your training. Do you want to drink some tea? That is the best black tea that I brewed for you. I have plucked every single tea leaf carefully. Perhaps I can fan you? It is now May, and the weather is so hot. Young Master Watson, why are you not sweaty? Were you practicing magic? It is as expected of Master Antonio's disciple. You are amazing, indeed. A few of the Sword Saint's disciples walked out of the courtyard. Some were holding a cup of black tea, some had a fan, and others were carrying a set of sofas. All of them were smiling at Watson. Ever since they had witnessed Watson's effort in making weapons for Antonio and Reed a week ago, they had become like that. It was no wonder. Usually, it was the disciples who begged their master. It was the first time they had seen their master beg his disciple to do something for him. Furthermore, that was a starlight tier weapon. Who would not want a real god tier weapon? Watson might not make such a precious weapon for them. They would be satisfied as long as he could fuse a few diamond or platinum tier weapons for them. Senior brothers, what are you doing? Watson looked at them awkwardly. Watson, you are the youngest disciple and the most talented one among us. Of course, we have to take good care of you so that Master won't blame us. Several senior brothers rushed in front of Watson. The person who was holding the black tea opened the teacup, revealing the steaming drink. The tea leaves floated on the tea. The tea was crystal clear, like good amber, emitting a tempting fragrance. Clearly, something precious had been added to it. Come, Watson, try the tea I made. No, sit on the sofa I bought. Let me massage your shoulders. All of you, get out of the way. Can't you see that it's noon now? The weather is scorching. Let me give Watson a fan. One by one, they pushed each other to get to Watson. Watson palmed his forehead. At that moment, a pleasant female voice said, Senior brothers, as Watson's seniors, is it good for you to curry favor with him like that? And don't think that I don't know what you're thinking. You're treating Watson so well because you hope that he can help you create powerful weapons and armor. Am I right? The person who spoke was none other than Christina. Dressed in a long yellow dress, she was as beautiful as an elf among flowers. Her expression was solemn, and her words made everyone look ashamed. Watson, ignore those people. Let's go. I'll take you out for a walk. The restaurant we ate in the capital last time was pretty good. Let's eat again today. Last time, it was my treat, and this time, it's your treat. Christina came in front of Watson, grabbed his arm, and brought him out of the Sword Saint's courtyard without any explanation. When the two of them left, the other disciples looked disappointed and sighed. Alas, Watson escaped again. But Miss Christina is right. Our motives toward Watson are impure. If that goes on, Watson will not want to make weapons for us, and he will also hate us. Even Master Reed has a thirst for Watson's weapons, but unexpectedly, Miss Christina never once mentioned letting Watson make weapons for her. Instead, she let him treat her. She really does treat Watson as an ordinary person. Before Miss Christina left home, she took the platinum tier weapon that His Majesty had bestowed upon her master, the sky-severing blade. That weapon is one of the 4 platinum tier weapons of the Holy Dragon Kingdom. However, when she returned, that sword was broken for some unknown reason. I heard that Miss Christina felt that she was not strong enough. Instead of relying on external things to become stronger, she chose never to repair that broken sword. If she wanted to repair it, she could have done it by asking Watson. In terms of awareness, we are still far from Miss Christina. Everyone sighed. Suddenly, they saw a familiar figure walk past them and out of the courtyard. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Then, someone said, "Senior brother Samuel? I haven't seen you in a few days. What have you been busy with?" When these Sword Saints' disciples were preparing to rope Watson into their group, they had wanted to look for Samuel as well. However, Samuel had been shut in his room those days and did not agree to their invitation. As a result, those Sword Saints' disciples could only think of ways to get close to Watson. They did not expect Samuel, who had not come out for a few days, to appear that day. "I've been cultivating in my room for the past few days. I'm going out to meet someone later. If you people have time to please Watson, why don't you go and cultivate more? It's better to rely on yourself than relying on external things. Even Christina understands that principle. Why don't you understand it?" Samuel, who was dressed in black, stopped and glanced at everyone there. He snorted coldly, and everyone immediately lowered their heads in fear. "Eldest senior brother, thank you for teaching us a good lesson." After reprimanding his junior brothers, Samuel left the Sword Saints' courtyard. As soon as he walked out of the courtyard, the expression on his face changed from calm to anger. He stretched his fist outward and punched the wall beside the door, causing the wall to distort. "What do you mean by relying on external objects is better than relying on yourself? Only a child would believe such nonsense. D*****. After that Watson came here, I feel that everything in the Sword Saints' courtyard has changed. If one could become stronger by relying on external objects, who would refuse it? Even people at Reed's level were ecstatic because they had obtained a Starlight tier weapon. If a person was calm about something, it was only because it did not meet their expectations. In the past, Samuel had always been the respected eldest senior brother. Reed was also very satisfied with him. Even Christina often chatted with him. However, that had changed. His junior brothers were more inclined to curry favors with Watson. Reed and Christina simply walked around Watson. That made him feel like an odd man out. He felt like he was only a passerby in the Sword Saints' courtyard. He was dispensable. "Do you feel that you are dispensable here? Just a passerby?" The sudden voice interrupted Samuel's thoughts and made him raise his head. When he saw the white temples of the man in front of him, as well as the well-defined square face that gave people a deep impression, he was suddenly stunned. "Your Majesty!" The man in front of him was none other than the greatest supreme ruler of the kingdom. As the first disciple of the Sword Saint, he had the honor of seeing His Majesty's appearance at the banquet in the palace previously. However, how could a dignified ruler of a kingdom appear there, and he even took the initiative to talk to him? While Samuel was feeling flustered and confused, the man in front of him said, "I came to look for Reed. I heard that Reed's strength had improved recently, which is a good thing for the kingdom. However, it seems that Reed is not there. In that case, as the Sword Saint's first disciple, you can tell me what has happened in the past few days." That Samuel was a little hesitant. He had just told his junior brothers that he was going to meet someone, and he was not lying. When he woke up in the morning, he found a letter on the table. The letter only had a few words written on it. It asked him if he wanted power. Another line with the address and time was beneath that. He was told to go to the Purple Dragon area of the Holy Dragon Tavern at noon sharp and wait. There would be a surprise then. At first, Samuel thought that it was some kind of prank, but he quickly changed his attitude. Did he desire power? Of course, he did desire it very much. If he had power, he could surpass Watson and become the focus of everyone's attention again. Anyway, he was like an invisible person there, so even if he were fooled by a prank, it would not be worse. What if the messenger did not lie to him? With that thought in mind, Samuel was prepared to go and take a look. However, he saw His Majesty when he reached there. "What? Is it difficult for you to talk to me?" Seeing that Samuel did not answer, the man continued to ask. His tone became low. That voice was like a warning bell ringing in Samuel's ears, giving him tremendous pressure. "I dare not, Your Majesty. I am very honored by your invitation. Let's go. I will tell you everything that has happened in the courtyard those last few days that might interest you, Your Majesty." Samuel only hesitated for a moment before answering. He did not need to think about which was more important, an invitation from someone he did not know or His Majesty's face-to-face invitation. "Then, let's go." The man smiled and did not say anything else. He led Samuel along the main road in a particular direction. After walking for more than 10 minutes, the two of them arrived at their destination. In front of them was a huge and splendid tavern. The words Holy Dragon Tavern were written on the door. When I mentioned the words to this tavern, this place was not so popular. I didn't expect it to develop into such a state in such a short time. I am very pleased to see a shop become prosperous from nothing. The man lamented as he looked at the people coming and going in front of the door. Samuel only looked at the scene in front of him. Compared to the quality of the tavern, he was more puzzled in his heart. Why did His Majesty bring him to the Holy Dragon Tavern, just like the person who left a letter for him? Could that be some kind of coincidence? Puzzled, Samuel and the man went into the tavern. Soon, someone brought them to the Purple Dragon area. A room with a curtain, magic barriers, and excellent sound insulation. The Purple Dragon area, even that is as written in the letter. Perhaps Samuel was not a stupid person. He guessed in his heart. Just like he had seen through his thoughts, the man in front of him, King Landar III, suddenly smiled. "That's right, Samuel, I put the letter in your room. I can't bear to see a genius being destroyed, so I'm ready to help you. Before I decide to officially help you, I want to ask that question again. Do you desire power?" Chapter 396, The Way to Be Stronger. "I don't want to ask you a second time. You must remember that. You are a genius that I value, so I will give you that generous treatment. You must not let down my expectations," King Landar III suddenly said faintly when Samuel did not answer him immediately. Those words made Samuel's body tremble. His face showed a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Your Majesty, I desire power." He did not expect that His Majesty had paid any attention to him. He did not expect that the king already knew about some of the things that happened in the past few days and had a preliminary judgment of the situation. He even said that he wanted to help him. What an honor it was! In other words, the king valued him more than Watson. Otherwise, His Majesty would not have said such words to help him. King Landar III seemed to be very satisfied with Samuel's answer. He nodded and said, "Not a bad answer. Only a person who craves power can increase his strength to the limit. For people who don't have the desire, I would not choose to help them at all. How will you help me increase my strength, Your Majesty?" Samuel asked nervously. Perhaps the king would give him a powerful tool, but the most powerful weapon that the kingdom could produce was only platinum tier weapons. Even the holy relics were only diamond tier. However, Watson was able to create a starlight tier tool. No matter what the king gave him, it would be useless. Perhaps, the king would give him a potion that could increase his strength. However, Watson was a diamond tier elite. He had to be on the same tier to be able to contend with him. Was there a potion that could increase a person's strength to diamond tier? He had never heard of it. Even if there were such a potion, King Landar III would keep it for himself? Why would he give it to Samuel? Did he really value his talent? Even though he was excited to meet the king, the fact that the king was so cordial in his conversation with him meant a certain amount of rationality still remained in Samuel's mind. What I want to give you is something that can increase your strength to the peak of diamond tier and even allow you to obtain a certain degree of divine power. This item is extremely precious. After you use it, you must be extremely careful not to let others know. As King Landar III spoke, he took out a jade box from his bosom. After opening the box, a ball of black viscous liquid the size of a fist was revealed. It squirmed continuously, and the edges of the liquid were in the shape of a spider web as black lines split outward, and the interior of the box trembled as if it was breathing. That ball of liquid seemed to have a life of its own, giving off an extremely uncomfortable feeling. After looking at it, Samuel swallowed his saliva. He did not doubt the words spoken by a king. However, he still wondered what that liquid was and how it could allow him to obtain the strength of a diamond tier elite. You should know that the 7 gods favor the kingdom. As its master, I get the gods' blessings occasionally and obtain some good things. This is one of the items. Its name is God's Remains, and it is made up of the fragments of the divine kingdom. Oh, I almost forgot, you might not know what the divine kingdom is. Perhaps you can understand it as the corpse of a god. Consuming this item will allow you to obtain a portion of the god's power when you were alive, but, after all, a god is an existence that transcends human cognition. Therefore, the remains of a god have certain side effects. After consuming it, if one's will is not strong enough, they will likely be eroded by the remnant of the god's will and become a lunatic. At that point, King Landar III suddenly reached out with his hand and pushed the box containing the item toward Samuel. This was from the god of poison's remains. He was killed by one of the 7 gods that the kingdom worshipped, the goddess of shadows and potions, F.A.T.C.A.T.S. After absorbing this, you will gain the ability to use poison. You'd be able to kill a starlight tier with poison then. The price is the risk of madness. Isn't it very profitable? Samuel stared at the pitch-black god's remains in front of him. He hesitated for a moment before nodding. Indeed. He knew that even if King Landar III had been paying attention to him, there was no reason for him to give him such a significant gift. It turned out that the gift was risky. No wonder King Landar III did not use it on himself. However, he was relieved. The king had invited him for a meeting and offered to help him to increase his strength. He could not help but suspect that the other party had ulterior motives. He felt like the other party wanted to give him something that he did not need. To the king, it was a gift. To him, it was a rare opportunity. If he could succeed in life, achieve a decent status, and get everyone to remember him, he was willing to sacrifice part of his health if he could do all of that. With that in mind, Samuel did not hesitate at all. He grabbed the black viscous liquid in the box, gritted his teeth, and stuffed it into his mouth. That scene seemed to be something that even King Landar III did not expect. He was stunned. "Your Majesty, what's wrong? You didn't expect me to agree so readily." Samuel felt a greasy and disgusting taste in his throat, and there was a rotten smell in it. He forced a smile out of his discomfort. "No, I haven't told you how to use that thing. How could you swallow it directly? You need to smear it all over your body and wait for it to penetrate the skin gradually." "Ah, Your Majesty, why didn't you say so earlier?" Samuel's face turned green. He covered his mouth and hurled at the space at the side. Nothing came out of his mouth. Instead, spider-web-like black threads crawled out by themselves. Those black threads covered Samuel's face first. Then, they went down his neck and gradually covered his body. Samuel's ears, eyes, and even every pore on his body were filled with that black substance. That scene looked very scary. Samuel opened his mouth wide as if he wanted to scream. However, his Adam's apple was also covered by the black substance and no longer trembled. Samuel stood where he was and turned into a pitch-black sculpture. Desire is the driving force that pushes a person's progress. At the same time, it is also the original sin that destroys a person. As for how it will turn out, let's wait and see. A few days ago, I had planned to use the Campbell family to deal with Watson. But that plan had failed. This time, I plan to let them kill each other. How will he deal with that? King Landar III stared at Samuel's statue. There was no sadness or joy in his eyes as if he was looking at an ordinary tool. It was completely different from the amiable look he had before. As he spoke, he picked up the wine glass in front of him and poured himself a drink. Just as he was about to pick it up, the shadow of the wine glass extended on the table irregularly, and a female voice came from within. King Landar III, you really are a man with a wicked sense of humor. I've never seen a human like you who takes pleasure in playing with others' lives. Speaking of which, that young man is only a platinum tier elite. It's still too much for him to bear the god's remains. Although the god of poison is only an ordinary starlight tier existence, he was still a starlight tier being. There's a world of difference between him and regular humans. If this goes on, that kid is very likely to die. Such a pawn doesn't have much value, so what if he dies? However, I don't have anyone who could infiltrate the Sword Saint's courtyard better. Furthermore, he was given the remains of a god to absorb into his body. Wouldn't it be a waste of that material if he died without doing anything? I won't allow that to happen. Sidi, help him. King Landar III, take note of your tone. You should be saying please. Did I hear wrongly? A god that cares about these things? What is the meaning of secular etiquette to you? You are humorless. All right, I won't chat with you anymore. I'm going to start working. The shadow of the wine glass on the table squirmed, extended deep into Samuel's shadow, and connected with it. The statue stook as cracks appeared on it. More cracks continued to appear until the shadow of the wine glass squirmed and returned to its original state. Then, Sidi said, it's done. After all, I killed the god of poison, so his remaining consciousness will feel fear. However, this situation can only last for 3 days. After that, that guy will only become worse without my help. 3 days? That's enough time. King Landar III put down his wine glass, his eyes flashing. Under his gaze, Samuel's black outer shell quickly fell off, turning into pieces and falling to the ground. Then, Samuel seemed to come back to life, gasping for air as he looked around. A glint of darkness flashed in his eyes. After he swallowed the god's remains, he suddenly felt as if every cell in his body wailed. Those cells seemed like they were not his but another individual with an independent consciousness, going in all directions. At the same time, images of ancient times appeared in his mind. Many different and glorious kingdoms sat in the sky. Suddenly, one day, those divine kingdoms began to clash with each other. Kingdoms collapsed. Some became ruins, while some absorbed other damaged kingdoms. They still stood in the sky, becoming stronger. The impact of the divine kingdoms was no weaker than if the earth shattered or if the sky collapsed. That scene gave Samuel a tremendous visual impact. When he snapped back to his senses, he realized his body was not quite the same as before. Firstly, the energy in his body had reached peak diamond tier, just like what the king had said. Secondly, he was initially a swordsman, but at that moment, the combat aura in his body had been replaced, turning into a viscous black liquid. That black liquid was comparable to lead and mercury. If it flowed at a slightly faster speed, it could even produce the sound of a great river. At the same time, Samuel had an epiphany. The blood in his body was the most potent poison in the world. Just one drop of it would be able to pierce through the intestines of a platinum tier elite. Your Majesty, how long have I been unconscious? Not long, about a few seconds. How do you feel? I'm all right. Samuel knelt on one knee toward King Landar III. Thank you for your grace, Your Majesty. I feel great now. Samuel's eyes had a hint of wriggling darkness. He felt like his body was filled with power. The poisonous blood in his body was like another organ of his. He could take the initiative to separate it and enter someone else's body to poison them to death, which made him sigh with emotion at the power of a god. He could evolve such an ability. At the same time, he regained his confidence. Right then, he had the strength of a peak diamond tier elite and had grasped the power of a god. No matter how talented Watson was, he was nothing to Samuel. It seemed that he would be able to defeat Watson soon and obtain everything he wanted. Samuel, it's good that you don't feel any problems as expected of the person that I value. Since I've rewarded you, it's time for you to tell me what happened in the Sword Saint's courtyard over the past few days. Yes, Your Majesty. I'll tell you everything I know. While King Landar III was getting information from Samuel, on the other side, in the direction of Christina and Watson. Miss Christina, didn't you say that you will take me to the tavern where we ate last time to continue enjoying the food? Why did you bring me to the Holy Dragon Tavern? Watson stood in front of the magnificent Holy Dragon Tavern and looked at the passing crowd helplessly. He could still remember the battle with Augustus there a week ago, which had caused a lot of trouble. The Holy Dragon Tavern is the largest in the kingdom, and the dishes here are formal and expensive. It's fitting to treat you here. What do you mean by that, Lady Swordmistress? Why did you invite me to a feast? Watson sensed something and asked sharply. He saw Christina's mouth rise in dissatisfaction. Watson, we've become familiar with each other. You've already started to call me by my name. Why are you calling me Lady Swordmistress again? It sounds like we're strangers, doesn't it? Besides, you should know why I invited you to dinner. Don't tell me that you invited me because you want me to make you a Starlight tier weapon. Of course not. I'm not as unambitious as my senior brothers. What's the use of just getting a Starlight tier weapon? If that weapon is stolen, won't they lose their power again? Furthermore, without the corresponding strength, carrying a weapon of that level will only attract other people's jealousy. Then what do you want? Of course, I want you. Christina bent downward and put her face in front of Watson. At the same time, she stretched her slender fingers and poked Watson's chest. One had to admit that Christina's appearance was perfect. In addition, one could smell the sweet scent of Christina's breath at a close distance. Watson subconsciously swallowed his saliva and hugged his shoulder. I'm sorry, Miss Christina. I can't agree to such a request. I'm still a child. Idiot. What are you thinking? When I said I want you, I did not mean your body but your knowledge. You told me before that you had a way to improve your ability quickly, and you said you could teach me, but you did not tell me the truth. Now, I'm going to use this meal to bribe you. This is just the beginning. As long as you teach me what I want, I will not only treat you to meals every day, but I will also do other things for you. As long as it's something you can think of, then I can do it for you. Very well, don't go back on your words. And are you sure it's anything I ask for? That's right. Christina nodded firmly at first. Then, she thought of something else, and her face blushed. She was gorgeous, but she revealed a shy look, making her look even more attractive. But don't embarrass me. I won't do that for you. Miss Christina, it's not fair to add conditions now. Then, Watson shrugged. But treating me to a meal every day sounds good. Since you're so sincere, I'll give you a simple method to make you stronger this time. It was a success. Christina clenched her fists discreetly, and the corners of her mouth curled upward. She had wished for Watson to give her an answer for many days, especially after Watson had successfully fused a Starlight tier weapon. She was even more curious about the method that made Watson stronger. Watson was only a Diamond tier elite, so how could he make something a Starlight tier weapon? There must be some special trick to that. If she could learn that trick, would she be able to do the same thing? Initially, she had not been in such a rush. Unfortunately, that morning, the Royal Academy informed her that they would stop recruiting students in 2 days to start the course officially. She decided to learn that technique before entering the academy. Once there, she would show it to the other geniuses and get them to understand the Sword Saint family's fighting style. Christina and Watson walked into the Holy Dragon Tavern. Under the guidance of the service staff, they arrived at the Red Dragon area that they had visited a few days ago. That area had been destroyed by Augustus flames previously. However, the walls and roof had been replaced. It looked as good as new. In fact, some of the decorations had been replaced with more expensive ones. The staff brought them into the room and left. Christina and Watson sat down. They were only one wall away from the king and Samuel. As soon as Christina sat down, she spoke with a fervent look in her eyes. "Speak, Watson. What is the way to make me stronger?" "Believe in me," Watson replied in a serious tone. Christina was stunned for a few seconds before she snapped back to her senses. She smiled and waved her hand. "D****, Watson, you're still trying to fool me with your previous answer. You said that you would tell me the real technique to become stronger. You wouldn't go back on your words, would you? So, what is the real technique? Believe in me." "Watson, are you kidding me?" Christina widened her eyes, and her face trembled. "No, Miss Christina, I am not lying to you. Everything I said is true, but you don't believe me. If you've tried to believe in me but didn't get anything in return, then you can say that I've lied to you. As for now, you can't blame me for your one-sided doubts." He had been truthful with her. Believing in him could get her benefits. In the end, Christina chose not to believe him. She even said that she would do anything for him. Perhaps those were only words. Since Watson's tone was so confident, it was Christina's turn to be swayed. She said reluctantly, "Watson, since you said so, then I'll try to believe in you. But if that doesn't work, I'll have the right to be angry with you." Chapter 397, Christina vs Samuel. "Ah, no. Watson, stop. I can't take it anymore." The only sounds coming out of the huge private room were gasps and the gentle begging of a woman. Watson sat opposite Christina and pointed at the space between her eyebrows, pouring a large amount of knowledge into her mind. Meanwhile, Christina's face was flushed as she endured the excessive knowledge. Her body and clothes were wet with sweat. After Christina decided to believe in Watson, he immediately asked her to pray according to the prayer and offer her faith devoutly. After she did that, the source of chaos elemental magic in Watson's soul suddenly had a projection of Christina's soul, which allowed him to impart his ability to her through the projection of his soul. Then, after the prayer, Christina felt like she had formed some kind of magical connection with Watson. She knew that Watson had not lied to her. The knowledge that he had imparted to her made her even more ecstatic. That knowledge not only included Reed's sword technique that she had not learned, but there were also many other techniques that she did not know. Those techniques were the result of Watson's fusion, including the Kingdom of the Sword. In addition to sword techniques, the knowledge that Watson had taught her also included magic and some rules that only Diamond Tier elites could master. In other words, her sword techniques had significantly improved, and she had also become a mage. Even if she had not advanced to Diamond Tier, an ordinary Diamond Tier expert was no match for her. "Watson, what you said is true. I obtained a large amount of knowledge just by believing in you. How did that work?" As she digested the large amount of knowledge that appeared in her mind, Christina took out a handkerchief to wipe her sweat. That principle is similar to the kingdom's priests who believe in the 7 gods and can obtain feedback from the gods. In essence, prayer is a special way to establish a connection with others. "Since the gods can, I naturally can too," Watson replied confidently. His reply made Christina fall silent. It was not difficult to connect that point with the priest profession, but only Watson had done it for hundreds of years. On the one hand, no one would be so disrespectful as to replace the gods with themselves. On the other hand, no one had the strength of a monster like Watson, worthy of being worshipped. Since she had absorbed the knowledge in Watson's mind, Christina understood how powerful Watson was. The power displayed by Watson was close to that of a god. Watson, according to our agreement, since you have taught me the way to become stronger, I will do whatever you want. Don't worry. I am not a person who goes back on her word. Tell me what you want. Christina wiped her sweat. There was still a blush on her face, and she looked gorgeous. I only have one request now, and that is that I'm hungry. Miss Christina, please treat me to a meal. Watson, is that all you want? I would have agreed to more. Christina glanced at Watson. Also, don't call me Miss Christina. Just Christina or Tina, like my senior brother calls me. All right, Christina, can we eat now? Eat, eat, eat. Why do you only know how to eat? She was such a beautiful woman, but Watson had turned a blind eye to her. That made Christina feel a little aggrieved. When she asked Watson to make a request, she worried that Watson would make excessive requests. She was still considering whether she should refuse if Watson made such a request. Since Watson had helped her so much, she had considered agreeing to that. In the end, Watson did not make any requests related to her. However, she was even more dissatisfied. Christina was not a person who paid attention to her appearance, but she knew she was beautiful. Ordinary men would always be stunned when they saw her. Even some of Reed's disciples looked at her in the same way. Even if she did not say it out loud, Christina still enjoyed their attention. However, Watson looked at her with an unusually clear gaze. There were no distracting thoughts in his eyes. It was as if he did not treat her as a woman. That made her somewhat frustrated. Perhaps Watson was too young and did not know much about matters between men and women. Let's order some dishes. Today, I will let you eat enough of the sumptuous dishes. Christina did not show on her face. Instead, she picked up the menu and slammed it fiercely on the table. The meal lasted for about half an hour. After eating and drinking, Watson said that he had other things to do. He left Christina in the room, which made Christina even angrier. That Watson, the more I look at him, the more detestable he gets. He had agreed to go out with me today, but in the end, he just had a meal and ran away. Is it so difficult for him to be with me? Playing with an empty goblet, Christina poured a glass of red wine into it. She finished it in one gulp and rubbed her silver teeth. Ever since she was young, she had been treated like a treasure. No one had ever been so indifferent to her. What Watson did made her angry, but at the same time, it stimulated her fighting spirit. When other nobles were 12 or 13 years old, they already had sex with many women. Why is Watson so simple? Is his mind only full of knowledge about cultivation? No, I have to teach him some things in that area. I want to do something that a young man at that age should do. Just treat it as my reward for his lessons. After making up her mind, Christina rolled her eyes. She seemed to have thought of something and revealed a sly smile. She shouted, "Bill, please." Lady Sword Mistress, the cost is 1,000 gold coins, a waiter walked in and said respectfully. 1,000 gold coins. Christina looked pained. It was not a small amount for her. Just as she reached into her pocket and was about to take out her purse, another waiter said, "Lady Sword Mistress, you don't have to pay. This meal is free of charge." Free? What do you mean? You and your friend are our distinguished guests at the Holy Dragon Tavern. In addition, someone disturbed you while you were here last time, so we can't take your money. Just take it as our compensation for you. The waiter gave a perfunctory explanation. The real reason was that as a member of the Severed Fingers gang, how could he take money from the Black Emperor? The man had healed his fingers, and he was made a gold-tier elite. He could even get a complete set of gold-tier weapons and armor in 2 days. He had been very grateful to Watson for so many benefits. Everyone in the entire Holy Dragon Tavern was grateful toward Watson. The higher UPS had told them that Watson could eat there for free, and they were all happy to accept it. After the waiter finished speaking, he looked at Christina curiously. He remembered that Watson had also brought the swordswoman there last time. Could there be a relationship between the two of them? The waiter could only guess about that. Even though Christina was 7 or 8 years older than Watson, Platinum tier cultivators aged very slowly. 7 or 8 years old did mean anything at all. In addition, Christina was the Sword Saint's daughter, so she seemed to be on the same level as Watson. While the waiter was still fantasizing, Christina had already stood up and tossed 10 gold coins toward him. Since you are so sensible, those are tips for you. Thank you, Lady Sword Mistress. The waiter took the coins and bowed his head respectfully to thank her. He watched Christina leave with excitement hidden in his eyes. What a generous person! The nobleman would usually only reward him with 1 gold coin if they were happy, unlike Christina, who had given him 10 gold coins. He did not know that Christina was delighted that day because her strength had increased. He thought Christina was a generous person. That made him feel that that kind of woman was a good match for Watson. Christina stretched her back and displayed her graceful body curves as she stood at the Holy Dragon Tavern entrance. The sun shone on her face, just like her mood at the moment. If not for Watson's little episode, that day would have been the best day for her. In the past, she had been shackled by heavy pressure. She wanted to work hard to become stronger, but she had always been unable to advance quickly due to her talent. However, all of her worries had disappeared. The knowledge that Watson had taught her was equivalent to her decades of hard work. As Watson became stronger, the knowledge that she obtained also increased. Basically, she did not need to cultivate anymore. She could become a top expert in the kingdom by absorbing the knowledge from Watson. Of course, I can't stop cultivating. No matter what knowledge he imparts to me, I still need to understand them. It's still early. I'll go back to the courtyard to practice my sword technique. With that thought in mind, Christina was about to leave when someone suddenly stopped her. Tina, why are you here? Christina turned her head and realized that the person who spoke was her eldest senior brother, Samuel. The man, who was dressed in black, had also walked out of the Holy Dragon Tavern. His temperament was not quite the same as usual. The way he looked at her made her feel a little uncomfortable. Senior brother, I'm just here to have a meal with Watson. Watson. Perhaps it was Christina's imagination, but she felt that the temperature around Samuel dropped a few degrees after she mentioned Watson. Then Samuel asked, where is he now? He said he had something to do and left. Let's not talk about that, Tina. Why are your clothes all sweaty and messy? What did you do with Watson just now? Samuel's gaze fell on Christina's clothes. Christina's brain capacity was not enough to store the knowledge that Watson imparted to her. It caused her to sweat profusely and also almost faint a few times. Therefore, her clothes were a little messy. She thought about taking a shower and changing her clothes when she got home, so she did not mind. She did not expect to see Samuel when she went out. No matter what she and Watson did, it was her freedom to do as she liked. Furthermore, nothing happened between her and Watson. Samuel's repeated questioning made her feel uncomfortable. She immediately replied coldly, eldest senior brother, that's none of your business. Do you need anything else? If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Wait a minute, Tina. I was too impatient just now, so my words might have been a little over the top, but you have to believe that I'm doing that out of kindness. I'm afraid that Watson will bully you. Thank you, eldest senior brother. So, do you need anything else? Tina, don't be in such a hurry to leave. I do need you for something. His eyes darted around as a smile appeared on Samuel's face. I've been meditating in my room for the past few days. Reflecting on my training over the past 20 years, I've gained an epiphany. My strength has increased greatly. As for how much it has improved, I'm not sure myself. Therefore, I'd like to have a duel with you to confirm my current tier. He had told King Landar III about what had happened in the Sword Saint's courtyard over the past few days, including Watson provoking the Campbell family and creating a Starlight tier weapon. After that, King Landar III said, "I understand." Then, he left. He followed him out of the Holy Dragon Tavern. He did not expect to see Christina there. He had always liked Christina and treated her as his future wife until Watson's appearance broke all of that. When he heard that Christina had gone out to eat with Watson, he got even angrier, so he had to make a move. He was no longer the old Samuel. With the help of King Landar III, he had already obtained power comparable to that of a god. When he fought with Christina later, he would only need to show a little bit of his strength to shock her, and then she would understand that Watson was not Reed's most outstanding disciple. If Reed knew that his strength had improved so quickly, he would also pay more attention to him. The other disciples in the courtyard would also regain their respect for him, serving him tea and massaging him. Just thinking about it made Samuel excited. He felt that he was about to reach the peak of his life. "Okay, then let's go to the courtyard now." Christina gladly accepted Samuel's suggestion. She had just received Watson's gift and wanted to see how strong she had gotten. Samuel's suggestion was exactly what she wanted. Two people with different thoughts returned to the courtyard together. Once the news of the duel spread, the whole courtyard was in an uproar. All the Sword Saint's disciples were there to watch the duel, even some of the servants in the mansion were hiding in the dark. It was a duel between their eldest senior brother and their master's daughter. It would be bound to be interesting. At that moment, Christina and Samuel stood in the middle of the arena, each holding a wooden sword and standing more than 10 meters away from each other. "Who do you think will win in the duel, eldest senior brother or Miss Christina?" A few Sword Saints disciples had gathered nearby and sat on the benches to watch the duel. They were discussing the fight. "I think Miss Christina will win. After all, she had been in the City of Steel to continue Master's legacy. When she came back, she had matured quite a bit." Then, another person said, "I think eldest senior brother would win. He has been by Master's side for so many years, so how could her training beat that? Nothing could be more advantageous than the Sword Saint's teachings. Even Master said that eldest senior brother is stronger than Miss Christina in terms of strength. All right, it's useless to argue about that. Why don't we make a bet? We can bet on the eldest senior brother and Miss Christina. Let's see who wins." "That's a good suggestion. I'll bet on Miss Christina. 10 gold coins. I'll bet on the eldest senior brother. 50 gold coins." The Sword Saint's disciples were having a great time gambling. Samuel and Christina's duel was due to begin. "Tina, are you ready? My attack might be much stronger than before. You have to be careful." Samuel reached out and touched the wooden sword in his hand. He could feel the wail coming from the blade in his hand. It seemed like the wooden sword was afraid of him. It was no wonder he had the power of a highly toxic god in his body. Everything in the world would be frightened of him. It seemed like he had to show mercy to avoid hurting Tina. While he was thinking about that, Christina held the wooden sword in front of her. "Come on, senior brother Samuel. Then, I won't be polite." Platinum tier fighting technique Void Blade. Samuel started with his best fighting technique. The space was cut open, and a high-precision wind blade made of pure wind cut through the space. It appeared out of thin air and was in Samuel's left hand. With the wooden sword in one hand and the void blade in the other, Samuel waved the two blades simultaneously. The intersecting sword aura left a pitch-black pattern in the air, shattering the space like a mirror. The entire courtyard was rocked. That move made all the disciples there exclaim in surprise. Samuel's move was more than 10 times more powerful than they had imagined. After all, Samuel was at the peak of the diamond tier. Even if he deliberately held back, the attack he released could not be compared to the past. Then, Samuel turned around with his back toward Christina. He raised the sword in his hand, ready to welcome victory. He thought Christina would not be able to resist that move. Defeating Christina with one move was the script that he had arranged. It could prove how powerful he was. However, a few seconds after that, the expected praises and exclamations did not ring out. Instead, everyone looked at him with a strange expression. That made Samuel feel puzzled, and he subconsciously turned around. The sword aura he released had stopped in front of Christina. It did not cause any damage, and Christina had blocked it easily. The sword aura settled in front of Christina. As she clenched her right hand gently, the two sword auras immediately shrunk. They spun obediently in her palm. "Senior brother Samuel, what are you doing? The battle is not over yet. Why are you leaving the field? Don't tell me you think your soft sword aura can defeat me?" Chapter 398, Work Inspection. "What's going on?" Samuel's smile froze on his face. Christina had called his sword technique soft. That did not make him angry. He did not understand how Christina could withstand his sword attack. He had obtained power comparable to that of a god with the help of the king. Christina had also just advanced to platinum tier. How did she manage to do it with such a huge gap between the two? Did Christina's strength increase without his knowledge? Even though he was puzzled, Samuel did not show it on his face. Instead, he smiled. "Tina, I was just testing the waters with that sword just now. I did not use my true strength. Now, I will use all of my power with this sword. It won't be as easy to follow up as before." As he spoke, Samuel waved the wooden sword in his hand at Christina again. Void blade, consecutive slashes. At that time, Samuel secretly raised his tier to diamond. The void blade he released was several times thicker than before. Wherever it passed, there were noticeable cracks in the space. The void blade streaked across the sky, surrounding Christina. It was as if they were going to pierce through Christina like a porcupine in the next second. "Tina, if you can't hold on anymore, let me know." While releasing his sword technique, Samuel also looked at Christina worriedly. That scene made the surrounding sword saints' disciples gasp in admiration. As expected of eldest senior brother, he still has the energy to ask during the battle with Miss Christina. If it were us, we would probably be forced to admit defeat by now. Since could withstand eldest senior brother's sword means that her strength is at least at peak platinum tier. Eldest senior brother is also very powerful. Each of the void blades that he released was stronger than the previous ones, and he released them over 100 times consecutively. A bright disciple watched the battle in front of him. Other than surprise, there were also doubts in his heart. How did Samuel and Christina's strength improve by so much in only a few days? Was the speed of improvement no less than Watson's talent when he was learning sword technique? Did Samuel and Christina have the same talent as Watson? They did not show it before, but perhaps Watson had activated it. It seemed like they were the only ones without talent. Many onlookers thought the same. At that moment, the battle in front of them had reversed once again. Samuel slashed out void blades, one after another. He did not cut the void around him, and he also almost shattered the space that Christina was in. All the energy elements contained in the space were extracted. Under such circumstances, even if Christina was a peak platinum tier elite, she could not unleash her sword technique without the help of the energy elements. With just one move, it sealed Christina's ability to counterattack, and it could also deal a blow to her. Samuel's move was quite exquisite. Christina did not dodge it. Instead, she waved the sword aura that Samuel had just released in her palm in front of her. Diamond tier sword technique, Water Moon Dance. The sword aura turned into a long river and instantly broke through the shattered space. The energy elements around Christina's body had already become very chaotic. It was almost impossible to borrow the energy inside, and Christina did not borrow it in the surrounding space. She only used the sword aura that Samuel had slashed out to release that diamond tier sword technique. There was too much sword aura there. A river of sword aura broke through the broken space and arrived in front of Samuel in just a moment. He subconsciously reached out his hand to block it. The wooden sword in his hand let out a crisp crack and broke apart. Half of the sword blade flew out. At the same time, he subconsciously took more than 10 steps back, and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. Water Moon Dance? The diamond tier move that Master taught Watson a week ago? Tina, when did you learn it? Samuel thought Christina's talent was not particularly outstanding. Otherwise, she would not have left the family a few years ago. When she was more than 10 years old, Christina had achieved gold tier status. Her improvement was not as fast as the best of their disciples, and her understanding of sword technique was not fast either. How did Christina, who was not quite talented, become so powerful? When did Christina learn the diamond tier sword technique? Samuel pondered in his heart as he bit his lip. He had wanted to fight with Christina. On the one hand, he wanted to show Christina how powerful he was, and on the other hand, he tried to establish his authority. However, he could not achieve that, and it even had a certain counter effect. Then, Samuel realized that as expected, all the junior brothers' gazes were turned toward Christina. Their eyes were filled with admiration. Senior brother Samuel, the blade in your hand is broken. Do you still want to continue fighting? Christina asked with a calm expression. Samuel was not the only one who was puzzled. She was also a little surprised. After all, after inheriting Watson's knowledge, her strength had increased by dozens of times. Under such circumstances, Samuel was able to fight back and forth with her, which surprised her. However, she did not care too much. After all, she had left the family for a few years. During that period, under her father's guidance, it wasn't strange that Samuel's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. After fighting with Samuel for a while, she understood her own strength. She wasn't weaker than ordinary diamond tier experts. There was no need to continue fighting. If she were to be serious, she might hurt Samuel. Tina, it's just a broken wooden sword. That can only prove that the quality of that sword is not good. It doesn't mean that I lost. I can continue fighting. Samuel simply threw away the wooden sword in his hand and extended his right hand to Christina. Her moves had already proved her strength. He understood that if he did not use his full strength at that moment, even if he could win that competition, he would still fight for hundreds of rounds. If that happened, he would lose the opportunity to establish his tall and big image in front of everyone. Although doing that might hurt Tina, I don't have a better choice. Gritting his teeth, a black light flashed in Samuel's eyes. He wriggled toward Christina's open right hand, and a ball of pitch-black substance drilled out of his pores. When that ball of pitch-black substance appeared, a rotten smell immediately came out of the air. The surrounding onlookers immediately started coughing when they smelled that air. Some of them even had flushed faces as they clutched their chests, appearing to be in pain. That is not a sword technique. I've never seen eldest senior brother use such a move before. What is that? Everyone was full of doubts about the thing in Samuel's hand. At the same time, fear rose in their hearts. They had a feeling that if that mass of pitch-black substance were injected into their bodies, they would die without a doubt. Eldest senior brother, that thing in your body gives people a very uncomfortable feeling. What is that? Christina also frowned. Tina, don't care about that. Can you block this move? Samuel did not respond. Instead, he gently flung the black liquid that was squirming out of his arm. Black water droplets flew in Christina's direction, but before they reached her, they had already cast a shadow over her heart. Not daring to be touched by the black water droplets, Christina hurriedly used the most powerful sword technique that Watson had taught her. Starlight Tier Sword Technique, Kingdom of the Sword. With a light shout, the wooden sword in Christina's hand shattered. The sword aura that rushed toward the knight burst out from the fragments of the wooden sword, turning into a huge sword-shaped kingdom that spread out for an unknown number of meters. It was as if a divine mountain had fallen from the sky and suddenly chopped down. All the black liquid in front of her had not even touched her skin before it directly evaporated. Then, the huge kingdom of the sword did not stop. The front section landed directly on Samuel's head. Samuel's body was smashed into the ground with a bang, leaving a deep human-shaped hole in the ground. The entire courtyard shook a few times. "Senior brother Samuel, are you okay? I didn't mean to use that technique." At that moment, Samuel's clothes were tattered, as if a storm had raged for several days. The skin under his clothes was also torn open, and black blood flowed out from his skin. Seeing that scene, Christina hurriedly withdrew the kingdom of the sword. She ran in front of Samuel and looked at him worriedly. The kingdom of sword should not have caused the black blood. In the knowledge that Watson had taught her, the kingdom of the sword did not have the ability to change the opponent's blood. Since it was not the kingdom of the sword, then the black blood on Samuel's body could be caused by one situation. "Senior brother Samuel, why is your blood black? Are you poisoned?" As soon as Christina's voice fell, the other disciples also came forward worriedly. They did not know what to do around Samuel. "I did not expect Miss Christina to have mastered a move like the kingdom of the sword. She really hit it well." The oldest brother did not lose in vain. But what happened to the eldest brother at that moment? "He seems to have been poisoned. Eldest senior brother has been staying in his room for the past few days. He hasn't left the house at all. Who could have poisoned him? Perhaps the food he ate these past few days wasn't quite right. In addition, perhaps he lacked exercise, so he fell sick." Wow! Samuel, who was lying on the ground, did not die. He was on his last breath when he heard Christina's and his junior brother's guesses. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of black blood. Half of it was because his injuries were severe, and the other half was because he was angry. Poisoned? That black blood was not the symbol of a dead god? He was too ignorant. Eldest senior brother is vomiting blood again. If he were not poisoned or sick, perhaps he could have defeated Miss Christina. If he is healthy, perhaps he could win. Quick, get him into the room and quickly inform Master to come back. Get the doctor. A junior disciple hurriedly called out to the people around him. Wait a minute, I'm not poisoned, and I'm not sick. Samuel struggled to get up from the ground. He could not see a doctor. What would the doctor think? Once his master found out about that, the secret that he had seen the king might be divulged. In the end, before he could get up, Christina put her hand on his chest and pressed him down. Senior brother Samuel, it's all my fault. I didn't know that you were not feeling well and insisted on having a duel with you. Don't worry, I will definitely help to cure your illness. I said I'm not sick. Samuel's mouth was wide open. Just as he was about to make a sound, he saw Christina's palm move from his chest to his forehead and hit his temple. His world fell into darkness, accompanied by a burst of pain. Before he fell unconscious, Samuel was not thinking about why Christina was so powerful or what he would do if his master found out about his secret. Instead, he was thinking about King Landar III. When the king had given him that ability, he said that he would obtain the power of a god. At first, Samuel thought that he should be able to defeat his master, but he could not even beat Christina. The strength of that power was far from what he had expected. Did the king deceive and trick me? At the same time, on the other side, Watson, who had left Christina, went to the transformed Grey Manor. As soon as he entered the manor, the scene in front of him immediately underwent a huge change. Those people were walking in and out of the courtyard, appearing to be very busy. When those people saw Watson, they were stunned. They put down what they were doing and bowed respectfully toward Watson. Meanwhile, Watson responded to everyone. Black Emperor, why are you here today? I haven't seen you for a few days. I really missed you, a sweet female voice echoed behind him. Watson turned around and saw that it was Veronica who had spoken. Veronica had changed quite a bit compared to the past few days. First, the heavy makeup on her face had become much lighter, revealing a charming look. Secondly, her clothes had changed from a simple and gorgeous noble outfit to a platinum-tier black robe. Veronica, you came at the right time. It has been a week since I distributed the mission to the members of the Severed Fingers gang and set the target. I am here to test the results. Please get the other higher UPS here. Yes, Black Emperor. However, she did not turn around and leave. Instead, she waved at her subordinates and called them over. Go and get the other higher UPS here. Tell them that the Black Emperor has invited them. After giving the order to her subordinates, Veronica turned around and walked to Watson's side. She held Watson's hand affectionately. Black Emperor, before the other higher UPS arrive, I'll tell you about my work during these past few days. Didn't you tell me not to use debt collection methods to earn money? I've already issued that order to all my subordinates and changed the amount of repayment. I didn't expect some of the people who had been in arrears with us had returned some of the money, and there were even more people who came to borrow more money. It seems like we'll earn even more in the long run. I have you for your wise decision. Watson smiled at Veronica's compliment. There was a common mentality among people who owed money. If they owed less, they would try their best to pay it back. If they owed too much, they would simply not pay it back. After Veronica had adjusted the debt ratio, those people could finally hope to pay off their debts. Naturally, they would not default. Perhaps their inability to default was also related to Veronica's cruel methods of dealing with such people. Other than the increase in the number of people borrowing money, the number of gold coins in the bank's vault is also steadily increasing. Our assets have changed from 100 million gold coins to 1 trillion gold coins in just a week. If it weren't for the fact that there are too many gold coins in the bank, Klein and I would have been able to fill the entire royal city with gold coins using the wish for the world rings you gave us. At that point, Veronica's eyes flickered with excitement. Who had ever seen a city filled with gold coins? Even the powerful countries that had unified the entire continent in ancient times had never achieved such a feat. However, all of that was not a problem in front of Watson. As long as there was enough time, using the 10 rings to make wishes, it was possible to cover the entire world with gold coins. That's right. With that money, we can start the next step of our plan. Watson nodded, and Veronica quickly asked, Black Emperor, I wonder what our next plan is. I'll tell you when everyone is here. Since Watson did not want to say anything, Veronica could only remain calm and not ask, even if she was dying of curiosity. About half an hour later, the subordinate returned with the remaining 9 severed fingers higher UPS. Everyone arrived at the highest level of the sky courtyard, in a lush forest. Watson waved his hand, and the trees on the ground grew rapidly. A huge dome formed in the sky, and a round table appeared on the green grass. He walked to the first seat and sat down. He gestured for the others to take their seats. Everyone, I called you here today because I want to hear about the gang's situation in the past week. Veronica has told me about her work. I'm very satisfied. I did say that I would come here to check on you from time to time. If you perform well, I will give you a reward. You haven't forgotten that, have you? Of course not, Black Emperor. The 10 higher UPS responded respectfully. At the same time, they looked at Veronica enviously. They all had their own jobs and could not stay in the courtyard in the sky all the time, unlike Veronica. Basically, they did not stay there to wait for Watson's arrival. Judging from Watson's tone, he seemed to be very satisfied with Veronica. Veronica smiled when she felt their gazes on her. She looked proud. Those guys did not know how much effort she had put in to please Watson. Ever since Watson gave her the wish for the world rings and allowed Bashir and Amin to advance to platinum tier, she had made up her mind to follow that youth. She even deliberately gave up her heavy makeup. Instead, she put on light makeup that was more acceptable to the young people. Watson did not care about the reactions of those higher ups. Instead, he stretched her finger outward and tapped on the table. Please give me your report about your week. Let's start with the pinkies. I will see if you have done well. I can give you more instructions and a reward too. Elvin, you go first. Chapter 399, Accompany me to school. Yes, Black Emperor. After hearing Watson's voice, Elvin, sitting in the last row on the left, immediately stood up and talked about what she had done in the past week. Unlike others, Elvin did not sit on a chair. Instead, she sat on a shining angelic unicorn. Ever since Watson had given her that magical beast a week ago, she had always kept it by her side. Perhaps it was to show off. First of all, you forbade us from capturing slaves and selling them. You also forbade us from abusing them. Now, I have gotten those slaves properly settled. A batch of people who chose to leave has been sent out of the royal city. The rest have chosen to join us under the generous conditions that you have given us. Over the past week, more than 100,000 slaves have chosen to join us. 1/10 of them are gold tier, while the rest are iron to silver tier. As the Pinky, Elvin's original job was to be in charge of human trafficking. Then, she was in charge of gathering intelligence. She needed people if she wanted to gather intelligence. Those unsold slaves could be trained to become qualified intelligence personnel. Currently, I have established intelligence agencies in the royal city, the floating cities, and a few nearby cities where the great noblemen are stationed. If you can give me another month, I will be able to cover the entire Holy Dragon Kingdom with the intelligence network and realize the real-time grasp of the intelligence everywhere. Another month. Watson thought for a moment. Then, he smiled at Elvin. It's really hard for you to build the entire kingdom's intelligence network in a month. But if you can do it, I'll definitely not be stingy with my rewards. First, tell me what you've learned from the intelligence network you've already built over the past week. Yes, first of all, it's a significant matter between kingdoms. I heard that the northern border fortress at the Dragonspine Snow Mountain had collapsed for some unknown reason a few months ago. The Winter Nation in the north and the Elven Kingdom in the south have a close relationship. But I don't know what plans they have. Secondly, there's also something significant happening in the kingdom recently. The Royal Academy is starting in 2 days. They said that the king attached great importance to their students this year. He even decided to let the new students have an exhibition match and invited envoys from other countries to come and watch. The third significant event comes from the Campbell family. Recently, we don't know what happened to the Campbell family. Many of their members have closed their doors and haven't been out much. Furthermore, people passing by the Campbell family often hear the sound of banging inside. They don't know what's happening there. However, the sound is sometimes very loud and has seriously affected the lives of the surrounding residents. That has led to people complaining to the city defense department. Currently, that matter is being coordinated. Apart from those 3 pieces of information, there is also some less critical news. The owner of Raphael Winery had been found meeting a woman in the manor discreetly 3 days ago. They said that the woman was a marquis concubine in the royal city. After learning of that matter, the marquis sent someone into the manor to break the owner's legs and break a lot of red wine. Currently, the production of red wine at Raphael Winery has significantly been reduced. There is also a certain count who had sex with the daughter of a good friend. The count was concerned about whether to call his friend a father or a friend in the future. Stop. Seeing that Elvin was about to continue, Watson extended his hand and gestured for a pause. There's no need to continue with the unimportant matters. It's pretty good that you managed to gather that information within a week. Elvin, keep up the good work. I believe you can do better. If Elvin had continued with that, it would be all the gossip about the noblemen in the royal city and the surrounding towns. Watson was not interested in listening to that. Thank you, Black Emperor. Elvin respectfully thanked Watson and sat back on the unicorn's back. Next is Ring Finger. I can make that report. The person who replied was Count Grey. He stood up from his chair. This week, according to your request, we have successfully used the Sun and Moon gems to create the Sun and Moon wine. Currently, each bottle of wine sells for 1,000 gold coins. We've managed to sell more than 100,000 bottles. How much were 100,000 bottles of red wine? That was equivalent to 100 million gold coins. Even if they sold Count Grey's fake wine, it would still take several years to earn that amount. The reason the Sun and Moon wines sold so well was related to their effects. Normally, if a person wanted to increase their strength, they could only buy potions. Plus, to increase the effects of the potions, the taste was often unsatisfactory. However, it was different with wine. Since they could taste the delicious wine and improve their strength, why not? In addition, the Sun and Moon gems were originally fruits that grew on the world tree. Without using any techniques, just the taste of fermenting those fruits was enough to make people continue drinking them. In addition, Count Grey and his subordinates had been adjusting the formula day and night, creating a good ratio. As a result, the flavor of the Sun and Moon wine had already surpassed the red wine from Raphael Winery. However, since only a few people knew about the wine, there were also fewer people who bought it. Not many people knew about its effects. Otherwise, it was not possible to sell more than 100,000 bottles of wine in a week. They would probably sell more than 1 million bottles. Not bad, keep up the good work. First, sell the Sun and Moon wine to a large extent. After that, I will help you expand the variety of wine. The things that Watson could fuse include other things as well. The weaker ones were like crystal wheat. The fermented beer could be called crystal beer, and the stronger ones could be like the blessings of the gods and demons. When those things were mixed into the wine, they would become the gods and demons' wine. Who could resist a wine that had a chance of changing randomly among the demons and angels after drinking it? After making up his mind, Watson told Count Grey to sit down and asked Basher and Amun for their reports. Black Emperor, according to your previous arrangement, we are now accepting requests to kill only the most vicious people. Even though our business is less, the industry has a much better opinion of us. Someone even sent us a thank you letter. Basher placed a thick stack of letters on the table. He scratched his head and looked a little embarrassed. In the past week, they had not used the resources provided by Watson to make a huge profit like the others. Since he and Amun had been promoted to Platinum tier, he felt a little ashamed that they had received such great benefits but had not done anything. Amun, who was sitting opposite him, was no better. He smiled bitterly as well. My current title has changed from a bloody executioner to a merciful killer. I feel that if this continues, my title will become an outstanding resident of the capital or a good person who doesn't kill. There's nothing bad about the current situation. With a better reputation, there will be more people looking for you for more work. After all, becoming an assassin doesn't require a fancy nickname but real strength. In that week, do you feel that the number of orders has increased? Amun and Basher looked at each other. The awkward expressions on their faces disappeared, and their faces brimmed with confidence. Of course, the orders have increased. We are, after all, Platinum tier elites. Other than a few Platinum tier existences and members of the Archduke's family, there's nothing in the kingdom that we can't kill. Previously, Amun and I were unable to complete many missions due to our strength. Even if we completed them, we would still need to deploy a large number of people. But now, Amun and I can wipe out the entire defensive force of an entire noble family. Speaking of which, a few days ago, I just wiped out a large noble family that consisted of dozens of people. That family persecuted their residents and even toyed with women. I killed all of them myself. Even hundreds of guards could not stop me. Basher's spittle flew everywhere as he spoke with assurance. Watson did not continue listening and turned his head. Next, It's Thumb's turn. No one was listening to Bashir, and the other people were giving him stern looks as if they wanted him to be quiet. Bashir could only suppress his desire to show off and obediently shut his mouth. At the same time, Marcus began to speak. Black Emperor, currently, we have only sold 10 platinum tier weapons. They were sold to 3 archduke families and some influential families in the kingdom. Every platinum tier item is sold for 10,000 gold coins. Within a week, we've earned a net profit of 100,000 gold coins. Only 100,000 gold coins? Marcus's words caused all the Severed Fingers gang upper echelons to reveal looks of disbelief. Within that week, the others had easily earned over 100 million gold coins. However, as the original leader of the Severed Fingers gang, Marcus made even less than the middle fingers. It was too embarrassing. Marcus maintained a simple and honest smile. He was not in a hurry to refute it. Instead, Watson's eyes flashed when he heard that. Only sold 10? Even though I said I would let you walk the high-end path and not sell too many at once, isn't 10 too little? Or do you have some special plans? Yes, as expected of the Black Emperor, everything I've done can't escape your eyes. This is what I think. First, sell 10 pieces to the 3 archdukes and the famous noblemen. Those nobles are not chosen at random. Some of their descendants are students at the Royal Academy. In addition to Elvin's intelligence, His Majesty will personally give a speech when the classes start and ask the students to complete the exhibition competition. If a platinum tier weapon that doesn't exist in the kingdom appears in the exhibition competition, and those students use it to win against those who are better than them, then they will be able to kill their opponent. It will cause the entire royal city to explode. Amazing! Watson only said 3 words to Marcus' plan, his eyes full of admiration. He had distributed the weapons to Marcus with the intention of selling those weapons bit by bit. When platinum tier weapons became popular in the capital, he would sell them in large quantities at a low price. He did not expect Marcus to come up with a different plan based on that. They would not sell the weapons first but distribute a portion to the designated people, letting them shine in the exhibition competition. After they made their weapons famous, they would start selling them officially and make a huge profit. That was a completely different strategy from Count Grey's and selling the Sun and Moon wine. In the modern era, that strategy was called advertising and asking for endorsements. Watson sighed with emotion when he thought of that. It was as expected of a Severed Fingers gang higher up. They were extraordinary, indeed. All right, so far, everyone has spoken. I already have some understanding of everyone's results for this week. The person I am most satisfied with is... Looking around, Watson deliberately stretched out his words. After he got everyone's attention and they looked at him nervously, he said, the person who I am most satisfied with is the Thumbs group. The Thumbs group? Everyone looked at Marcus with envy. They were not fools. After Marcus explained the specific method, they already understood the subtlety of his idea. What was better for publicity than the archdukes and noblemen in the kingdom? Those nobles would promote those platinum tier weapons. Even if they had ordinary weapons in their hands, as long as they said that the weapon was excellent and showed that their family had been using them, then the other noblemen would follow suit. After all, if the archduke family thought it was good, the other noblemen would think the same too. Now, I have to fulfill the promise I just made to you. Since the Thumbs group is the best, I will give you a special reward. Watson moved his palm and took a black and red long sword and a shiny feather coat made of holy feathers from an unknown place and placed them on the table. This sword is called the Sword of Strife, and the coat is the celestial feather robe. They are starlight tier weapons and armor. Now, I will bestow them to the Thumbs group. Starlight tier weapons and armor. After hearing Watson's account, the higher UPS breathing became labored. In their eyes, platinum tier weapons were already considered top quality. They had never seen anything at diamond tier, let alone starlight tier. That was definitely something that they could only dream of but could not obtain. If they had known that the reward that Watson had mentioned was so good, they would have worked harder no matter what. They would have made the right decision to become the top. Unfortunately, it was too late for them to regret it then. Black Emperor, is that weapon and armor really for us? Marcus and the other thumb stood up and gulped at the long sword and feather coat in front of them. That's right. They're for you. Of course, if you don't want them, I can take them back. Watson had given them such precious items as a way to show his generosity to the broken fingers. On the other hand, he looked down at the two Starlight tier weapons and armor. The weapons in his mind were at least the crown staff and the thread of destiny. If they could not bring him a great increase in strength, the Starlight tier items would attract attention. It was right to give them to Marcus. The Platinum tier items they sold were quite rare in the Holy Dragon Kingdom. If anyone questioned the authenticity of the Platinum tier items, they only needed to show the Starlight tier items, and the other party would definitely believe them. The rewards have been distributed. Next, I will arrange the work for you. After distributing the rewards, Watson explained the future arrangements for them. First, Marcus, just do as you had planned. Count Grey, I don't have any objections to what you're doing. On the other hand, Klein and Veronica's bank will need some additional actions to add to the intelligence work that Elvin and Snick are in charge of. Elvin, Snick, when you use slaves as an intelligence network, they don't need to take special measures to keep it confidential. Instead, they need to keep the intelligence network in a conspicuous place. Black Emperor, if we don't take any measures to keep it secret, what if others discover our intelligence? Elvin looked puzzled. That was the first time she had heard of such a request. To create an intelligence network without keeping it a secret. Did they want to invite spies? At least in the short term, our intelligence network doesn't need to establish any protective measures because most of our current intelligence personnel are slaves. Those slaves include people from the Holy Dragon Kingdom, people from other countries, and even people who aren't human. Some of them will inevitably stay for revenge or other reasons. Even if there are no spies, how loyal can you expect those people to be? Watson smiled. Furthermore, the essence of the intelligence network is to obtain information. What's the difference between one person receiving information and everyone else receiving the same information? Instead of creating a defense mechanism for the intelligence network, I want to achieve a fee for information. Regardless of their identity, anyone can obtain any information from us, even if they are our enemies. As long as they pay, it's fine. If the information can be wholly publicized and not in the hands of a few people, then no one will attack us because of it. But, to obtain information from us, they will protect us instead. We will not need to have any protective measures for the intelligence network because all the noblemen who want information from us will establish protection for us. There was no need for protection, or perhaps everyone was protected. His intelligence network construction measures were also taken from modern thinking. Transparent information where people could pay for them was equivalent to having an information website that could be accessed infinitely. Of course, it was not advisable to apply modern thinking to the other world. There was a prerequisite for doing so. I must make the kingdom's supreme leader, King Landar III, feel as if the existence of that intelligence network is necessary. Otherwise, everything I've done will be in vain, Watson muttered to himself. He already had a plan in mind to let the king know that the intelligence network was built by him and could not be destroyed. While he was thinking, Bashir and Amun asked in unison, Black Emperor, you've arranged work for the others. What about us? What do we need to do? Watson had mentioned everyone except for them, which made them feel a little nervous. They were afraid that Watson would ignore them. It was a good thing to have something to do. They also hoped to get Starlight tier weapons. Don't worry. Of course, I haven't forgotten you. Watson recovered from his thoughts and looked at the two of them. I do have a mission for you. To be precise, I want to give it to Amun. How can I help? Amun asked nervously. Well, do you want to go to school with me in 2 days? Hey? Aman was stunned for a few seconds before he opened his mouth wide. Even the other higher UPS had the same expressions on their faces. It was like question marks had appeared on their heads. Chapter 400, Meeting Two Girls by Chance. Black Emperor, what do you mean by accompanying you to school? Aman asked carefully as if he did not understand Watson's words. I mean it literally. In 2 days, I will go to the Royal Academy to study. It will be very troublesome to come out. Furthermore, if I don't have anyone to talk to, it will be very troublesome too. Watson smiled at Aman. None of the above is the reason I asked you to accompany me to school. If it's not the real reason, then why did you say it? Is it to tease us? Aman complained in his heart, but he did not say it out loud. Instead, he waited for Watson to continue. After a few seconds, Watson said, the real reason I asked you to accompany me to school is to let you get in touch with the noblemen in the kingdom and see if there are any talents that we can recruit, even if they are the children of less significant noblemen. His goal was to overthrow King Landar III. Therefore, he had to grasp the future of the kingdom, the younger generation. If most of the noblemen were rotten, the kingdom would have a different scene. Those things were what Watson wanted to do. Since he had subordinates, he could relax a little because he still had a lot of things to do. Sure, I understand. Your views are not something that people like us can guess easily. Please allow me to make some preparations. I will go to school with you in 2 days, Aman said respectfully. Bashir, who was not far from him, looked envious. Aman's job was not only easy, but he would get close to Watson. It was simply the best job. He also wanted to go, but it was a pity that his age was not suitable. It was unlikely for him to enter the Royal Academy. After giving all the Severed Fingers gang members a plan for the future and making detailed arrangements, Watson ordered everyone to leave in batches. He was the last to leave. When he left the courtyard, he saw a familiar figure. Nightingale, why are you here? The person who appeared in front of him was none other than Nightingale, the maid he had brought from Mount Creation to the royal city. At the moment, Nightingale was wearing a black dress, white silk gloves on her arms, and a top hat with flowers pinned on it. When she saw him, the Nightingale appeared a little shy and reached out to lower the brim of her hat. Watson had assigned Nightingale to Denise when they reached the royal city. Since Denise had a mansion there, it was just right for her and Nightingale to live in it. Watson had wanted to live in the Temple of the Stars with Antonio, but since he had been learning sword techniques with Reed, he decided to live in the Sword Saint's courtyard. He had not seen Nightingale for a long time, so he did not expect her to appear there suddenly. Watson, I came here today because Denise said that there are many things that are not available at the border, so she wanted to take me out for a walk. I'm not here because I haven't seen you for a few days or because I miss you. So she's here for me. When he heard Nightingale's words, Watson found it funny and decided to tease her. Since you did not come to look for me, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. Wait a minute, Nightingale hurriedly reached out with her hand, not knowing what to say. It's okay, Nightingale. I won't tease you anymore. Anyway, I have nothing else to do later, so I'll accompany you to walk around here. Watson looked around as he spoke. By the way, you said that Denise accompanied you here. Where is Denise? I don't know either. When we arrived here, she said that she had a stomach ache and then disappeared. She must have gone to the toilet somewhere. Oh, right. Before she left, she told me that I should leave with you if she did not come out after half an hour. There's no need to wait for her. Then, let's go. Watson nodded after listening to Nightingale's words. The two of them walked side by side and left Count Grey's manor. Not long after the two of them left, at a street corner not far from the manor, Denise came out from the shadows and looked at the backs of the two people in the distance. Miss Nightingale, I really don't want to be a third wheel. I'll let you and young Master Watson enjoy the day together. You don't have to thank me. Watson, I haven't seen you in the past few days. What have you been doing? Nightingale gradually relaxed as they walked on the street and looked at the people passing by. She was a killer trained by the border count. She might look cold, but she was a kind person. She only acted tough in front of everyone else, and she would be herself with Watson. Nothing much. I'm just learning some sword techniques from Master Reed. When I have nothing to do, I'll go out for a walk, Watson replied casually. He decided not to tell Nightingale about the Severed Fingers gang for the time being because it was very dangerous to form an underground force to fight against the king, and the Severed Fingers gang was still developing. There was no need to involve Nightingale in it. Is that all? Nightingale asked doubtfully, but her eyes were full of disbelief. I saw you walking on the street with the Sword Saint's daughter during the day. I saw a similar scene a week ago. I even heard that you had a conflict with the Campbell family because of the Sword Saint and got into trouble. Ahem. Watson was speechless. He had no idea Nightingale had been paying attention to him, even though he had not seen her in a while. I had dinner with Tina because she wanted to ask me questions, and the conflict between the Campbell family and me was not because of her, but because a guy named Augustus from the Campbell family took the initiative to find trouble with me. After a simple explanation, Watson thought she would not be troubled anymore, so he did not expect Nightingale to raise her eyebrows and become even angrier after hearing that. Watson, you even address Lady Swordmistress as Tina now. When did you become so familiar with her? Cough. Did you choose to live in the Sword Saint's courtyard because of Lady Swordmistress? No wonder you did not leave that place. And when you did, you were with her. You weren't happy when you were in the City of Steel, but now you're so nice. Watson, do you have masochistic tendencies? The more trouble someone causes you, the more you like. Nightingale's words became more fluent. Cough, cough, cough. One should never defend a woman when she was angry. Having deeply understood that principle, Watson could only cover it up with a cough and choose to change the topic. Nightingale, didn't you come out to visit the royal city and buy some things? Let's not talk about that. Let's see what you want to buy. I'll buy it for you later, as an apology for not seeing you for the past few days. I'm a maid. How can I let you spend money on me? Even though she said that she was embarrassed, Nightingale smiled again. She led Watson to the shops on the street and looked at the stalls one by one. Sometimes, she picked up a magic necklace with enchantment, sometimes, she picked up the enchanted earrings and gestured at the ears. It seemed that she had already regarded Watson as the person who would pay for them. Don't miss out on this place. There's good food here: winter bamboo shoots and clam soup. The winter bamboo shoots are the freshest at this time of the year. It's a rare delicacy when paired with soup. The blacksmith is having a sale. All weapons are sold at the lowest price. There are also top-notch gold-tier weapons. 1 for 100 gold coins. This is the only wine in the capital that can increase one's strength. That wine is brewed from sun and moon gems that grow in the forest of eternity in the south. Those two kinds of fruit can only mature after thousands of years. If you consume this wine regularly, even if you don't cultivate for a year, you can still advance from iron to silver tier. It can even prolong your life. For children who have good talent at home or older people who are close to the end of their lives, drinking this wine is a good choice, even if it's not for its efficacy. Just the taste of the wine is enough to make people unable to stop drinking it. When Nightingale was choosing jewelry, there were shouts from all around Watson. Many of the items sold by those people were products from the Severed Fingers gang. Watson could not help but smile. It seemed that the goods were indeed selling very well. Those members were not exaggerating. Under his plan, the entire capital and even the kingdom would gradually be under his control. The process might be a little long, but he could afford to wait. Watson, how do you feel about this accessory? Nightingale stood up from the jewelry stall. She held an ornament that looked like a hairpin in her hand and gestured at her hair. The hairpin was lovely. Behind the spiral-shaped tip was a bird-shaped sculpture. It made her look a little playful when it was inserted into her hair. The hairpin's craftsmanship was very ordinary. There was only a defense spell added to it that could block bronze tier attacks. Other than that, there was nothing else. Only the carving's craftsmanship was worthy of praise. Watson could easily fuse countless more powerful ornaments like that. However, Watson knew that Nightingale did not value that ornament. She was just enjoying the process of shopping. "Miss, you have good taste. That accessory is a rare gold tier accessory in our shop. The magic engraved on it can resist the attack of a silver tier elite. You can have it for 100 gold coins. Perhaps the young man next to you would pay for it." Seeing Nightingale pick up the hairpin, the shop owner kept bragging about how good the hairpin was. Watson rolled his eyes. A bronze tier accessory was worth only 1 gold coin, but the shop owner wanted 100 gold coins for it. It was 100 times more expensive. Since Nightingale seemed to like the hairpin very much and 100 gold coins were not much anyway, Watson decided to pay for the accessory. At that moment, 2 women in luxurious clothes walked out from behind the stall owner angrily and threw a broken bracelet at the stall. "Boss, didn't you say that the bracelet you sold me is gold tier equipment mined from ancient ruins? What caused it to crack after only a few uses? The quality is too poor. Can you fix it for me?" Watson looked up and saw that the 2 women were only 13 or 14 years old. They were about the same age as him and looked vaguely familiar. As for the bracelet in their hands, Watson knew it was only an ordinary bronze tier bracelet. It was mixed with some ores mined from the relics, which emitted an ancient aura because the craftsmanship was not bad. Ordinary people who did not know much about casting would not be able to tell the difference. "Ladies, once goods are sold, they are not returnable. I am only a merchant and not a master forger. How would I know how to repair a product from the ancient relics? Since that bracelet is a product of an ancient ruin, it might have been corroded, which was why it was damaged. Or perhaps, you misused the bracelet and caused it to be damaged. You can't blame me for that. You liar. I am a dignified student at the Royal Academy. How would I misuse a magic tool? I only introduced gold tier magical energy into the bracelet, and it cracked on its own. I see that your bracelet is fake. You liar. Since you can't fix the bracelet for me, then give me back my money." Watson did not want to pay attention to the quarrel between the 2 girls and the shop owner. He simply took a purse filled with gold coins from his pocket, took 100 pieces from it, and handed them to the shop owner. "Boss, I'll buy the gold tier hairpin. Here are 100 gold coins." "No, you can't buy the things here. These things are all shoddy. If you buy them, you'll be fooled." The 2 girls grabbed the collar of the shop owner. "Miss, no, my lords, this is only a small business. Don't interfere with my business." However, they did not let him go. The other girl looked at Watson. She tried to persuade him out of kindness, but when she saw him, she froze. "Watson, why are you here? Watson, who are these 2? Nightingale put down the hairpin in her hand and walked over when she heard the woman calling Watson. She frowned slightly. "Do you know other women besides Miss Swordsman?" Nightingale had thought that her competitor was Christina, but it seemed like she had more than one competitor. "I don't know either. I don't know those 2 people." Watson felt aggrieved and asked the 2 girls, "Who are you, and how do you know me?" During the process of questioning, Watson carefully looked at the faces of the 2 girls in front of him. One of the girls was in a fiery red dress. Her hair was also red and tied into a ponytail. There was a trace of heroic spirit in the corners of her eyes and eyebrows. The other girl was holding a parasol. Her face was as delicate as a doll, and she was wearing a white pleated dress. Under her 2 smooth calves, her pale feet were in a pair of sandals tied with crystal ribbons. It made people want to bend down and play with them. "Watson, I can't believe that you don't know us. We participated in the Royal Academy's assessment on the same day. I thought you would remember us when you saw us." The girl with the red ponytail pouted in dissatisfaction. She grabbed the collar of the shop owner and said, "My name is Lily Campbell, a member of the Campbell family. I'm currently a student at the Royal Academy's Mage Department. Watson, I've heard a lot about you. Not only did you get a full mark in the assessment, you even went to the Campbell family to make a scene a few days ago. At that time, I wasn't there, so I did not know about it. My family didn't tell me what had happened. Can you tell me?" "I'll tell you when I have the chance," Watson replied as he looked at the other girl. The other girl with a parasol bowed slightly and revealed a sweet smile. "My name is Charlotte St. Laurent Gary." St. Laurent? He remembered that was his father's family name. Watson took another look at the girl and realized that she looked like his father. Both of them had brown hair and blue eyes. "Watson, don't stare at a woman all the time. That is very rude behavior. We have already introduced ourselves. Shouldn't you introduce your companion to us?" "Ah, sorry." Watson snapped back to his senses and shifted his gaze. He pointed at Nightingale and said, "This is the Nightingale. She is my friend. She must be extraordinary to be able to be friends with a genius like you. Is she also a student at the Royal Academy?" "No, I'm not," Nightingale said, "and I'm not young Master Watson's friend. I'm just his maid." "A maid?" Lily, the red-haired girl who was holding the shop owner, raised her eyebrows. "But you don't look like a maid. Instead, you look like siblings or a couple. This is the first time I've seen a young master buy jewelry for a maid." Charlotte's expression was a little strange. "Miss Nightingale, no matter what your relationship with Watson is, I advise you not to buy jewelry from this shop. They are swindlers. Lily and I were tricked because we bought the things from that shop. School is about to start, so Lily and I wanted to buy some useful items. If I had known earlier, I would have let thick-skinned Lily ask her family for them." "Charlotte, who are you calling thick-skinned? And do you think I don't want to ask my family for them? They've been studying something in front of a huge puppet recently. They don't even make other magical items anymore. If I go to them, they'll chase me away impatiently, let alone let me ask for some items. Even my mom is the same." As the youngest child of the head of the Campbell family, Lily was Freya's daughter. As she spoke, she shook the shop owner. "I almost forgot about you. Hurry up and return our money. Otherwise, I won't be polite to you. Miss, can you please put me down? I feel like I'm going to faint from your shaking. I really can't give you any money. Perhaps you can pick another bracelet from my shop." "What's the use of picking a bracelet randomly? It's just a bunch of junk anyway. It's just a change from one junk to another. Either you give me money, or I'll destroy your shop." After arguing with the shop owner for a long time, Lily had also attracted the attention of other onlookers nearby. Many people were pointing at them, which made Watson frown. He had wanted to buy something for Nightingale and leave, but seeing Lily's unrelenting attitude, it would be very difficult for him to buy the hairpin. After he thought about it, he said, "Miss Lily, don't act so rashly. I can help you restore the bracelet. Why don't you let the shop owner go?